Why would we move out to the middle of the desert for 2 to 3 hours?
Why? How about because this is the most important fucking podcast to ever happen in the history of the world?
Great job.
Thank you.
Wow.
Great job.
Did I blow up the levels there, Ben?
A little bit.
Okay.
But that was a great job.
Mhm.
But no one does grumpy,
No.
sort of bureaucrat spittle like
Yeah.
Mr. Matt Damon.
I was talking to someone.
Inimitable.
I was talking to someone who had seen the trailer and hadn't seen the movie yet, and said, like, there's that moment that Damon has in the trailer that feels almost a little silly and a little goofy and over the top. And I watched the trailer and just feels like, is he yelling every single line
Right.
in this movie? And my answer was, he's basically playing Superintendent Chalmers, right? Like, it's
Sure.
not that he's like failing at seriousness. It is kind of ostensibly a comedic performance of him being the befuddled, constantly at the brink of blow up
Well-
Superintendent Chalmers to Oppenheimer's Skinner.
I hear what you're saying. Well, not Skinner though. Well, Oppenheimer's not really Skinner, right? Because Skinner's got such a stick up his ass.
But he's the Chalmers too.
Just
He's
thinking of
more-
my
look,
favorite
obviously,
Chalmers joke.
He's Professor Frank. Oppenheimer's Professor Frank, and Chalmers.
I feel I have blood on my hands.
Waving.
My favorite Superintendent Chalmers joke is when he says, it's the exact same joke. What gives? Like when the guy gets a laugh out of the kids.
Just nothing is funnier for me than there's the sort of catch breath on Aurora Borealis.
Well, obviously,
But just the moment where
A very-
you can't even.
sort of a scientific moment.
That's what I'm saying. The whole movie is sort of that scene. The whole Damon
Look,
arc
not
of
to
it.
jump. We haven't even introduced ourselves, but
Sure.
except for one of my favorite moments in the whole movie is Damon is Groves testifying, and you can tell he doesn't want to say I wouldn't approve this guy now.
Yeah.
I
But he
wouldn't
says
approve any
it.
of those guys.
Well, no, he says it, but then he's like, but I wouldn't approve. He tags
Right.
on, and you can feel like him trying to break outside of the protocol by being like, what the fuck is, come on, guys.
And then he has one of the best answers of
a
anyone
great
in
delivery.
the hearings where Macon Blair asked him the question. I forget what it is. And he said no.
The question is like, can you believe I'm a Sundance winner?
Yeah.
I directed a great movie at Sundance.
I starred in a great Sundance movie. I directed a great Sundance movie.
Sorry, what? Go ahead. What?
And he goes, no. And if I ever, for even a moment, led anyone in this room to believe otherwise, I apologize. There's something where he basically says, like, I'm sorry if I created a false expectation or a false understanding.
So-
Macon Blair, who plays the guy representing Oppenheimer in the movie, Ben,
Mhm.
is both a
A
writer
nice lawyer man,
and,
with the
and
glasses.
a filmmaker
Yeah.
in his own right. Do you know what his next project is as a filmmaker, Ben?
No.
The Toxic Avenger.
Oh,
That's true.
baby.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
sick.
Starring Peter Dinklage, right? And
Yes.
Jason
Jacob Tremblay. Yeah.
Is anyone
Um,
friends with him? Anyone know him?
I
That's
know
someone
like
we could-
40
get
million people
through to
who
him.
are his friend. Like he
Yes.
is not many degrees removed from us.
Yes. If we ever do Toxic Avenger on Patreon,
No,
I think
no, no.
he's a bookable guest.
I'm saying spray my ass with some sludge. Get me on set.
Oh,
the
you're
movie's
saying
done.
go the
Fuck.
other way. Well, we got come on reshoots.
Reshoots.
Patreon goal.
Ben saying sludge him up. Today we're not talking about Toxie. We're talking about one of the original Toxic Avengers, J. Robert Oppenheimer.
J. Rob.
In what just
Oppie.
has to be
No, J. Rob. From now on.
J. Rob Oppie. A no bits episode.
Very serious.
Very.
Right?
It has to be.
Yes, of course.
Must be.
Important.
It's the most important
This is
podcast
important.
in the history of the world.
Right.
Yes. It's Blank Check with Griffin and David. It's very serious and it's very important. My name is Griffin.
My name is David.
We got the full deck today.
Yeah, I'm producer Ben. I'm here today.
I'm social media maven Marie. I'm also here today.
And we have someone else joining us in the studio on your desk.
We do. She had a lot of thoughts about this weekend
Mhm.
at the cinema. Her name is film director Barbie.
And I believe you said she cost $5 at Ross Dress for Less?
It was TJ Maxx. Might have
Okay,
been
sorry.
$10.
Okay, hey.
And my mom bought it for me.
Hey. Goals.
Yeah, I just saw a Barbie with a camera and a little viewfinder, and I was
Yeah.
like, I need her.
Look, this is it's not a Barbie episode, right? Because this is a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their career, just given a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion projects they want, and sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby.
Boing.
And all of what I just said certainly applies to Barbie and the career of Greta Gerwig, but it is not a career we have covered up until this point. Genuinely don't really consider people until they've made four films.
I mean, technically, this is her fourth film. Would we cover Nights and Weekends if we did Greta Gerwig?
That would be like we'd do that on Patreon or something, right?
We do that on Patreon in the black hole.
Yeah.
Movies. Not great.
I also
we excluded her from Best First Film consideration when Lady Bird came out at the New York Film Critics Circle because of Nights and Weekends.
We don't talk about Joe Swanberg anymore.
No, and his whole thing was like, well, everyone directed this movie. So when people, when people say like that was her first co-directing credit, I'm like, she had a big hand in that movie, but his thing was always like, this is a collective.
We gave her Best Film instead.
I love that for you guys.
Great moment for us.
Yeah.
But that was one of two massive movies that came out last weekend. One was Barbie, a film we probably will cover in some future date when Greta Gerwig has made more films.
I love and admire the films of Greta Gerwig, and I think we'll talk about her one day on this podcast, but not today.
Because she is one of the few people in the modern era, the last 10 years, who has been able to carve out a kind of classic blank check career that keeps on trucking up and up and up.
It's true.
While also maintaining complete control of her voice and her style and her worldview. And for a long time, it felt like, is Christopher Nolan the last guy who got through the door and got to build a career that way at that scale with that intentionality? And these two people were pitted against each other at the box office weekend in what became probably the biggest cultural phenomenon in movies in a decade.
Yeah, because all the other biggest weekends were just one
giant
movie. Superhero movie.
And it's been the problem of one movie overperforming to the deficit of all other films in the marketplace, right? Everything getting squeezed out. And you had two very weird movies that came out and played like fucking big-titted blockbusters. And the second one is Oppenheimer, the movie we are talking about today, the new film by Christopher Nolan, who we covered on the podcast back in 2017.
Whoa.
Right? Is that I believe that's
time
correct.
Because it was time to Dunkirk, or
it was time to Dunkirk.
I mean,
our Dunkirk episode came out about a month late, but it was time to hot Dunkirk summer. But yeah, Christopher Nolan is the guy that I think became the modern archetype of that's how you do it. And this guy kind of does one for me, one for thems, but the one for them still feel personal, and the ones for him feel just like even wilder swings, and all of them work. And I feel like there was a lot of discourse in the last week or so, people talking online about like, who are the name directors that normies know? And how many of them are people who have come up in the last 15 years, as opposed to the obvious names like Spielberg who have existed forever, right?
Yeah.
And it's a pretty limited group. And two of the people who get thrown out as like recent people able to cut through are Gerwig and Jordan Peele, but they both had the benefit of being on-camera people for 10 to 15 years before their movies hit. Nolan is the guy. He is the guy where, like, you look at this movie in particular, and the biggest letters on the poster are a film by Christopher Nolan.
That's true.
That is the biggest selling point.
Well, the biggest letters are Oppenheimer, and that's why people are buying tickets, because they love Oppenheimer, the guy. The man.
It's hot IP.
As does this film.
Yes.
This film loves him unreservedly.
Unreservedly.
And at the end, there's a big thumbs up emoji.
Yep.
And then underneath it says, this thumbs up represents our opinion of the things that he did.
If that is your read on the film, then congratulations, you are correct. You have read this movie properly. Love the
Whatever,
discourse.
who cares? I mean, it's not even... Honestly, the discourse on both Barbie and Oppenheimer has been pretty good, considering the movies are so seismic. Because like, it's mostly just people being like, I don't know if you guys know this, but Mattel had a bit of a hand in Barbie.
Yeah.
You know, the toy company, so...
I don't know if people know this, actually, but J. Robert Oppenheimer had a bit of a hand in the creation of
nuclear weapons.
This is news to me on
He
both
did.
fronts.
He did.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yep. No, Barbie was not a plucky little indie film, just sort of like crowdfunded or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't actually. You don't actually see the bombs being dropped on Japan in Oppenheimer, so that might be why Ben didn't know.
Didn't know.
Right.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, this is one of the big things that people are arguing over, and
What if your seat printed out a statement that was like, I, Christopher Nolan, think that was bad?
Well, that's when people talk about like, what do the movie theaters need to do to
Sign.
draw people back in, right?
Sure. Seat printers?
Yeah, seat
Fax
printers.
machines.
These faxes, just a little roll
Yes.
unfurls.
Right. In real time during the movie, a running commentary of the director explained to you everything they feel. Cleanly,
Or maybe there's like a
clearly,
heat
no
measure,
ambiguity.
like good, bad. And he's like, I feel guilty. Good.
Yes.
You should.
Well, I think a lot of what people are chewing over on this film, and I, on balance, I'm very into the fact that just the culture is very engaged in trying to wrestle with both of these films.
Sure.
Which I think are both
That's what I'm saying.
interesting, complicated,
It's good.
thorny movies that are both kind of wrestling with themselves.
Yeah. It's good to have some stupids in there along with some smarts.
Absolutely.
Come on. Society.
Yeah, it's
You
more
got some
generous.
sillies.
than
It
I
means
would
people
be.
are
We do
seeing
live in a
it.
society. We can't all
do.
be film director Barbies who also have a
True.
perfect understanding of semiotics.
True.
Right.
God, she's so smart.
The bio
So
on the
smart, but
back
she
of film
can't climb
director
the
Barbie.
stairs. What?
She can't climb the stairs.
But she can
She's
sit
a plastic doll.
But she can sit in her little chair. Look
That's
how
the
cute her
number
little
one
chair
slam you
is.
throw at her. There are a lot of things she can't
walk
do,
upstairs.
David. That's the biggest one that jumps out to you?
Seems like an issue.
The back of her package had like an explanation of what a film director does. And I said to Maria, I think this is a better definition than I've heard outlined most places.
It's like defining like what is
What does a director do?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Sets the tone and look of the film.
it doesn't begin like Andrew Saris defined the auteur theory.
No, it's not auteur theory. It's like this is what the job is.
The French theory of mise en scène.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
right.
there's nothing foofy about this. This is just
Goofy.
what, film director Barbie wakes up in the morning. What does her day look like?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
She is picked up by a driver
Yes.
Yep.
to take her to set.
Yeah.
Director driver Barbie,
Right.
probably.
Right.
And you could argue that's actually the hardest working person on the set because they have to wake up the earliest.
Yes.
Their
Sure,
day
they
ends the
got to be
last.
half an hour before. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Her Barbie PA gets her a Barbie coffee.
Yes. And if she's a good director, she knows the PA's name.
Right.
People would say that's not the most important part of the job, but in a certain way it is.
I have a feeling it would be Ken PA.
Ken would be the PA
Ken would be the PA.
Yeah.
on a Barbie film set. All the
Okay,
PAs
so
are Ken.
We've
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
we've all
Right?
seen both films.
Yes. Although I believe David is the only one of us to have done the Barbenheimer experience.
They screened
I
them both
did
on
do
the
it
same day.
same day, even after
Yeah.
mocking the very concept where I was like, guys, there are multiple days in a weekend. Like, you can
Yeah.
fucking spread it out and be okay.
Well,
I ended up seeing them both the same day
Yeah.
because that's
What
what
a
was demanded
hypocrite.
of me.
Look,
Yeah.
200,000
I saw Barbie,
people.
then Oppenheimer. That was my order.
That feels like I saw these films on separate days. I've seen Barbie once now and Oppenheimer twice.
Yeah.
Same here.
I feel like that has to be the order.
I initially thought that should be the opposite because it should be fucking
Barbie's the pick me up.
exactly like, oh yeah, you know, get Oppenheimer done.
Yeah.
You know, eat your big meal.
Sure.
And then Barbie's your lovely dessert. But no, now I'm like, no, if I saw Oppenheimer, I'd be like, I don't want to watch another movie right now. I
That's-
need to go home and sit.
That's what our buddy JD Amato did, and you joined them just for the second half for the Barbie, but they did like
Yeah.
early Oppenheimer, then like a big lunch and extended hangout, like gave a couple hours.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it
think
is
so,
better
too.
to do Barbie first. Because
Yeah.
when I was sitting down to see Barbie, I'll confess, at 30 Hudson Yards, the evil headquarters of evil Warner Brothers.
It's Zaslav's
Their
castle.
Beautiful screening room. I, kind of had this, I've been looking forward to Barbie. I like Greta Gerwig, but I was kind of like, I'm excited for Oppenheimer. Like, I don't know if
Day before
this
you were
feels like
throwing
a
a couple
chore.
strays at Barbie.
Yeah, I was like,
you walked out, you said, I'm seeing Barbie tomorrow. I went, that's exciting. You went, it's gonna be I get it.
I want to see Oppenheimer.
I get it. It'll be good. I get it.
Yeah,
I know
I
what
was
it's
so
gonna
like,
do.
I know what Barbie's gonna be, and then Barbie surprised me. I
Barbie
will say.
surprised you. You
It's
cried
plot.
2 times?
I did choke up.
I cried twice too, David.
I choke up just like at footage of children playing.
I was
though.
gonna
Yeah,
Like, I'm
that's what
just like,
got me.
Yeah.
Um,
You're becoming a bit of a Kevin Smith.
Does
No
he
disrespect
cry a
to
lot?
you or
Well,
a
but I've
buddy.
always been an easy cry.
That's what I'm
cry
saying.
a lot.
That's what I'm saying. And I respect the emotional access that both of you have.
Mhm.
The
Me and
lack of
Kev.
guardedness.
I
You
didn't
and
cry
Kev.
at all. Steely disposition the entire time. Didn't even laugh.
No, Ben just sat and he listened.
Yep.
Yeah, you sat your boy ass down.
Yeah.
Your
Listen,
Ken ass down.
respectfully.
Yep. Just with
so-
my fist on my chin.
So yeah, but no, I mean it was a bit of a tiring day because I watched Barbie. I liked
Yeah.
Barbie,
Uh-huh.
and then I had to race to the office and review Barbie, and
Right.
then race to Lincoln Square to meet Mr. Oppenheimer. Doctor?
Oh, I was
Doctor.
gonna say. No, I can't say because it's a future miniseries. We had an episode scheduled
We
to
were
record
supposed to
between
do
the
a
two
podcast
screenings.
in between. That would have been, in retrospect, insane.
I'll say this: I won't say what movie it was, but it was an Alex Ross Perry
Certainly
episode.
a big one. Certainly a big one.
And we knew it was going to take a lot of time, and it was probably going to be fiery, and it was smart to bump it to a different day. But so yes, you had some reset time, and then we all saw Oppenheimer.
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
Except for Ben. Ben
you,
wasn't
Marie,
there.
and I saw Oppenheimer, and then Ben, Marie, and I saw Oppenheimer a couple days after that.
Then apparently Ben just went and saw it again.
Yeah.
I did.
Solo?
Solo Bolo.
You just took your ass to Oppie?
Matinee.
Regal Astoria, was it?
That's right.
Yeah.
It was. You know what was so nice about it?
I've never been
As
to
a,
that
as a
theater.
resident of New York City,
Yeah.
how rarely do you get to drive and park
Mm.
at a parking garage
Sure.
to go see a fucking movie?
Yeah.
Damn, that
Yeah.
was a real fucking luxury.
My question about it's the Kaufman,
It's a classic.
Yes, the Regal Kaufman
UA.
Astoria. It's right by whatchamacallit. What's the,
the Museum of the Moving Image,
well that, but also what's the soundstage that's by there?
Silver Cup.
Yeah.
No, is
No,
it,
it's
no.
not Silver Cup. It's
Is it
the,
Kaufman?
Yeah, Kaufman
Kaufman.
Astoria.
Yeah,
Yes, of
it's
course. What am I
Kaufman.
saying?
So,
Yes,
do they-
I
obviously.
have been here, actually.
I haven't
Yeah.
been to that Regal in a minute, but do they still have the Alvin and the Chipmunks in the lobby, or did they take
I
those
think
away?
they finally got rid of them.
I don't think.
Right?
No, I just remember seeing the Barbie display.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they had
Because they
the
had like
full-
fiberglass.
yes.
They had, I mean, they're there
Life-
as recent as Spies in Disguise,
Yes.
I'm seeing
Right.
here.
I think they finally only recently during the pandemic, I think, retired them.
Well, if
They
anyone,
went to a nice farm upstate.
yeah, if anyone
Okay.
knows where those guys are,
Yeah.
I'd love to know.
But we saw it first time in 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
Which is still the one time you have seen it, David.
Yeah.
And then we saw it in IMAX.
Yeah, I'll go see it in IMAX in 4 weeks when there
I
are
know.
tickets available.
Hottest
Yeah.
ticket in
My
New
God,
York
this
City.
thing's selling like crazy.
Easier to get in to see Hamilton than it is to get into
I literally saw someone selling a ticket for $1,000
I saw
on
that
Craigslist.
too.
It's wild.
Someone,
No, I don't know if he's successful.
someone
Sure.
in our Reddit was selling tickets for like $100
Jesus.
to the same screening that we
Fucking-
went to on Sunday.
Yeah, that's wild.
Sheesh.
If they had known that we were going to that screening, they might have upped the price a bit.
Yeah.
You guys got good seats?
We did.
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
really all credit to Marie who jumped. She pounced.
Yeah,
The second they went
She
on
didn't
sale.
bounce, baby. She pounced.
I
baby.
pounced.
She did. But all this to say, David, you have not seen IMAX yet. Ben, the second time you saw it, I imagine it was digital, or do you know?
Yeah, it was 2D.
Good old fashioned laser.
2D.
2D.
Okay. What if Ben came in here and he was like, it was a 3D show?
So 3D. They didn't even film that thing. They just kind of projected it sideways and had like a couple extra walls.
Fucked up.
Is it tilt your hat? It was less of a screening and more of a play.
I have seen it. Yeah, right.
They just had like
Also,
Regal employees.
it
come
was
out
about a
and-
bunch of Mormons, like,
Yeah.
singing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't seem like Oppenheimer
It
much
was
at all.
so different.
They
the
were
first,
in
second time around.
suits.
Yeah.
I mean,
funny,
right.
but
They
yeah.
went to like Africa.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was maybe it was a different cut.
I've never seen like the whole plot, every cast member change between two screenings of the same film.
Oh boy. Beautiful theater. though.
Why did
Yes.
you land on Book of
I don't
Mormon?
know. I was just kind of like, I have to pick a long running show.
I already
That's kind of
pulled
boring.
a Hamilton
Yeah,
reference.
you
you
did.
couldn't
Yeah.
do that. I took that off the table.
I thought about
Yeah.
Wicked, but Book of Mormon's kind of funnier because you're just
Well.
kind of like, oh, it's just running.
I mean, and talk about discourse. We can't talk about Wicked right now.
Yeah, it's
Too hot to touch. I think this movie is incredibly good.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to call it a masterpiece.
I will say, walking
You
out second
dare.
time, Marie and I looked at each other and we kind of feel like it might be masterpiece level.
Yeah.
Very excited that you
and
guys
the
felt
IMAX
that way after.
bump,
Yeah.
but also just the way, knowing everything going in. This is a movie where you're watching it the first time, and I think there's a bit of a twist, but it's a twist just in perspective, right? It's not a
Yes.
plot twist as much as it's like reframing how you've thought about the movie. And I do think because Nolan is the biggest name involved in this movie, I'm not saying he's the most famous person, but much like Barbie, they're both examples where everyone in the audience is pretty much sitting there going, what does Christopher Nolan have to say about Robert Oppenheimer? Which is a pretty fucking unique position to have like mainstream culture being
Right.
like, I know who this guy is. I understand his oeuvre, And I'm trying to figure out why he wants to make this movie, right? It's not just us nerds spinning on this. And I think for a lot of the film, that's like kind of one of the central tensions is like, what is it that's driving him to this? What is the thing he wants to say? What is he exploring? And I think it's what all the discourse is about is like, what is he trying to do and what is he avoiding doing and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to talk about the fucking discourse.
No, exactly.
But
we already had our fun with them.
Absolutely. I found this film very interesting through the prism of Nolan, who is a guy who is like as chewed upon as any modern director, but in so many ways does feel kind of unknowable. It is very easy to make jokes about him. It is very easy to parody him. It is very easy to do analysis of his work and identify what his themes are and what we can sort of extrapolate. Like, this is clearly a fear in his life because he keeps on going back to this. Or this is a thing he loves because he keeps on putting this on screen. But in a certain way, his interviews are always very clinical, you know?
Sure.
He's not someone who's going out there and doing like crazy self-promotion.
No, he's a reserved British man.
He's a reserved British man.
Through and through.
Right. He doesn't feel guarded.
The way it's been so interesting to see Robert Downey Jr. talk to the press because Robert Downey Jr. has no filter in a way that very few stars, because he just, what does he care? Right. And he's genuinely bigger than anyone else in this movie in his way.
Pause you right here and say to our listeners, if you have not read the New York Times interview with Robert Downey Jr., you have to read it.
But I also watched a lot of these, they do these fun, the Wired autocomplete and these round tables
timeline
and
of my
stuff.
career and all those things.
And other actors have said this too, but the way Robert Downey Jr. talks about how you think you're going in on set, he probably was imagining something of a Finchery experience of this sort of I need this exact. I have all the blocking. I know exactly how this is supposed to look in my head, and we're just going to do it again and again until I get it right. And apparently with Nolan, it's much more like, no marks on the floor. Let's feel out the space. We're going to figure this all out together, and somehow it'll be quick and kind of gentle. And you're like, this movie has tons of people in it.
Yeah.
Right? Like all these conversational scenes where there's a bunch of different elements of human elements to consider.
Benny Safdie, his interview with Bill Guy,
I highly recommend because that is another filmmaker talking about how a filmmaker works. Yes. With reverence and specificity. It's
Bill Guy was very deep in the Oppenheimer trenches, and everything he's been posting from his Oppenheimer findings and all his interviews that he did over months and months and months, all of it's worth reading.
Yes.
But he basically said, I know how filmmaking works. I've run sets myself, right?
Yes.
And I get the call sheet and I go this scene's going to be a fucking nightmare.
Right.
It's 8 pages.
Days,
it has 100 extras. We're in the middle of the desert. It's this and that. The dialogue's really intense. Right. How are we going to get this all done in one day? And we were done by lunch. And we were done by lunch without feeling rushed or panic, where it all felt very organic. And a lot of it is that when a filmmaker gets to this level, people know what they like and what they want. The greatest sort of power they have earned is the luxury of people backing the fuck off and letting them do things their way and not interfering. And it's you have trusted collaborators. You hire people who have a sense of I understand how I'm going to fit into his worldview. And they let things play out kind of organically,
What a G.
Yeah.
I think he's a cool guy.
I do. And I do think he had to do a lot more press for this movie because of the strikes.
Although they banked a ton of stuff, obviously.
But especially in the 2 weeks leading up to it, he's the one guy doing TV interviews and things like that.
He's a celebrity director.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
He's a fucking name, yeah.
Yes.
He really
I just
is.
think I saw less of him going out there and doing the sort of personality stuff as opposed to just sort of the junket video clips that would get recirculated.
Yeah. No, I mean, but I think things
wasn't he on The View?
He was on The View.
Yeah,
he's a guest host on The View all the time.
Yeah.
He's always jumping in.
He and Whoopi always cut it up.
Obviously Tenet, basically the publicity for Tenet was very limited because no one was interacting with each other back then. And then Dunkirk, I'm trying to remember because in Dunkirk he really was the name.
Yes.
And I guess it was sort of similar to this publicity rollout. I do
feel like he felt looser in this round of press, as loose as he ever gets.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a reserved Brit, but
he did admit that Talladega Nights is one of his favorite movies on a TikTok
if
thing.
you ain't first, you're lost. He said like that.
That moment where Rich Eis's jaw just dropped. He's like, I can't believe I got you to say that.
I feel like he's shouted out that movie before. I'm trying to remember. It rang a bell. Well, if I Google it now, it'll just be that.
He is also one of those guys where everyone who works with him says, like, because there's this feeling of like, is he secretive? Is he private? Right. Is he aloof? Is he unknowable? And everyone who works with him is like really nice guy. Right. Like it has his oddness, but with like
generally,
nice, personable
no yelling,
man. Right. And he's not like performatively obtuse, you know, or distant or whatever. And the thing you always hear from people is like, he watches everything.
Right. Well,
he's like not a snob about
I'm
movies.
going to shout it out.
Yeah.
Our friend Bobby Finger ran into him at the Regal Essex.
What was he doing?
Watching Skinamarink, baby. That's the thing I love, where he's like,
poor Christopher Nolan.
Skinamarink was all right.
No, it was not, David.
Big jerk.
It was,
no.
Marie,
that's an interesting film.
Marie,
come on.
How much of Skinamarink did you watch? I know you bought a ticket, and I know you went to see it in theaters, but you texted us in the middle of the movie and said, I'm currently inside of my coat hiding from Skinamarink.
Yes. It was a deeply unpleasant experience.
Film should
Griffin.
not be experienced through a coat. That's Christopher Nolan.
I've always said coats will be the death of the theatrical experience.
I will.
Netflix is giving everyone coats.
I will say that I was reminded.
David Zaslav is trying to put coats on the American viewing public. Yeah. I like our Nolan impressions. Just
so quiet and serious.
Doing ASMR right into the mic. And
I do love when he was like, HBO is the shittiest streaming service. Everyone was like, no, it's not. And I was like, he's mad, guys. Like, it's okay. Right. I was like, it's got some good shows on it. I'm like, I don't think he went through the library of HBO Max.
I'm fucking furious.
Finish your point, Marie.
No,
sorry.
my one
I'm
point.
I'm going to drag HBO Max on Maine.
Now I have another HBO point to make, but my first point about Skinamarink is I was thinking of Skinamarink with the audio jump scares in Oppenheimer.
Sure.
Those are the only two movies I can remember seeing in a theater.
Well, maybe he saw Skinamarink.
It's like we gotta crank the volume up on those
opened
bombs.
It back up again.
Did you notice that Skinamarink got a special thanks?
Like the demon?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that was my Skinamarink thought, and then my HBO thought is there's a lot of talk about Warner's scheduling Barbie to go up against Oppenheimer as a petty fuck you.
As a spite, you know, a spite store kind of thing.
This is basically big Nolan weekend.
Right.
The majority of his films, or a good chunk of them, and especially most of his highest grossing films have come out between July 20th and July 29th.
Every film except for Tenet, which was intended to come out then, obviously, but was pushed a bit. And Interstellar, which is pretty much the only movie he didn't make entirely with WB and was put out in the fall. And I bet you he wishes he put that out.
Yes. And Batman Begins was June, but from Dark Knight on, they're all basically his lucky end of July corridor.
But my question, didn't what is now Max remove Westworld, the Jonathan Nolan show?
Did they?
I think they removed it.
They sold it to...
But do you think that was part of the fuck you Nolan family?
That was later.
Yeah. I know, but...
No, that's their general incompetence.
Yeah, that's general. That is.
I don't know. That to me, I was like,
They did they sold it to like fucking Fubo or Rivet or
I bought it.
Moo.
All right, I bought it.
Yeah.
I gave him $800 and, you know, whatever, a bottle of wine.
That was that
like,
whole weird thing
Westworld.
where, like, they also, like, Zaslav wrote a check to Nolan for, like, $10 million recently to be like, hey, sorry.
Yeah, although then it was just like, well, but it was just residuals. like Zaslav was trying to spin it as like, I gave him a really healthy kind of, and then other people were like, no, those are just like residuals he was owed.
Yeah.
Who knows? I do know one thing.
Yes, David?
It didn't work or matter, this spite release thing, because
it
helped
it's
everybody.
one of those sort of magic, it happens sometimes, of just like everyone goes just to see the movies, and maybe Barbie's sold out and you end up in Oppenheimer or vice versa. Maybe both are sold out and you're like, fine, Dial of Destiny, what's he looking for?
Well, Ben, do you know?
Yeah, you know who Paw Patrol's going up against?
Do you know this, Ben? Paw Patrol...
There's a new film.
What is it? It's called Paw Patrol the Mighty Paws movie or the Mighty movie or something.
I think it's the Mighty movie.
It's the second movie, which is now they all get superpowers, right?
Yeah.
And that had staked out its release date, and it was theirs alone, no competition. And then a sneaky little studio named Lionsgate rode its tricycle up, and the new Barbenheimer is Saw Patrol. Saw 10 comes out the same day as the Mighty movie.
And there's a lot of audience crossover.
The overlap.
So we'll talk about Oppenheimer.
Parents dragging their kids.
I'm gonna.
I sat through Mighty movie. You have to sit through Saw X with me.
So
little Timmy.
We're gonna start Oppenheimer after I say this thing.
Okay.
Right. I feel like I'm setting the marker.
Yeah.
So Saw X has been announced.
Yes.
It will star Tobin Bell, the Jigsaw killer.
It's about him going to Mexico to get
some experimental health treatment.
Right.
Because, of course, Tobin Bell dies in Saw 2.
Yes.
And Saw 3 is set around his autopsy. And then I believe as the Saws progressed, they had increasing trouble trying to work him in.
Right.
So there's all this like timeline fuckery in
Fill in
Saw,
gaps.
like with
Right.
flashbacks and stuff. And so this one, they're just like, it's set between Saws 1 and 2. Okay. So he's in it.
Yeah.
And I tweeted a joke like, oh, the most terrifying thing of all, the healthcare system, right? Yeah. Funny joke by me, just fucking trolling.
Wait,
for
the healthcare system? That's
because he needs like cancer treatment.
Wait, but that's literally. I thought you were making a joke.
No.
Okay,
The
so
plot of
that's
the movie
literally
is he
does
goes to
die of
Mexico.
cancer.
He does.
It's the whole motivation for his twist.
I haven't seen any of the Saws.
So I've only seen Saws 1 and 2, and of course I did open the book of Saw.
You did.
Correct.
The Spiral, yes. But I have not ever seen all the Saws. All these people fucking start tweeting at me being like, bro, that's what Saw 6 is about. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Saw 6 is kind of the best one. And I'm like, I can feel it in me, the piece of me that just watched all the Insidiouses, where I'm just like, am I going to have to watch all the Saws?
You know you're going to.
God damn it. I think I am.
Yeah.
So I'll skip Spiral. I saw that one.
Yeah.
And maybe I skipped the original because I've seen the original a few times. Although maybe it'll be nice to walk back down memory road with Jigsaw. What do you think?
Yeah.
Old time's sake.
Yeah, maybe we do it on Patreon.
See Saw.
No, we're not doing it on Patreon. That'll take up half the year. There's so many of these fucking movies.
Wait, so he's actually is he in a puppet costume?
No, the puppet is just like a little robot.
Yeah.
So he's got a robot puppet, and then
He sends to talk because
the puppet is named Jigsaw, and he's also named Jigsaw.
The puppet's name is Billy. Billy the puppet on the tricycle.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
he calls himself Jigsaw. The whole Marie. This
is like when I went over to Ehrlich's to watch Bluey, and I was like, "Wait, Bluey is a girl?"
Yeah, Bluey's a girl.
But Bingo's a girl as well.
Yeah, they're sisters.
But I thought Bluey was a boy.
Why? Because he's blue?
Yes.
Maybe you better check yourself.
Yep.
I know. Well,
so Bluey's
Barbied thinking, Marie.
Bluey's parents are Bandit, who is blue,
right?
And Australians. They're both Australian herding dogs or whatever,
right?
And Chili, who is sort of brown,
right? So I thought,
and so each of their kids has one of their coloring,
right? But I thought it would be the boy looks like the boy looks like the dad, and
Marie.
the girl looks like the mom.
They got two girls.
And you know
baby.
what? I'm sorry, gender essentialism.
Look, I'm currently writing a Bluey article because they put up some new episodes.
Yes.
And my editors were eager for it. But I recently was talking to my wife.
Your editor is your 2.5-year-old daughter.
Bluey, want Bluey. I mean, she literally was asking me for Bluey today. And I was just having a conversation with my wife. My child is not even in the room. Where I was like, do you think Bandit and Chili will have a third kid? Because like they're aging in the show. Like the show is actually moving forward in time.
What, would the third kid be a mix?
Well, we don't. I was just sort of floating the idea. I was like, and she was like, no, but they threw out the crib in that one episode, and I was like, yeah. So they're probably done. And I was like, wait, I'm talking about them like they're real people.
You're
they're
analyzing it like it's fucking Mad Men.
They could it could be like the element of surprise,
and
that is a very. I've heard Bluey is very realistic in the way it deals with human emotions.
It is. It's. I mean, it's a perfect show. To be clear, I love Bluey so much. I just thought it was funny that I was talking about them like I was talking about my friends. I was like, you don't have another kid.
Okay,
should we have Bluey on the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would. I mean, I would die. We don't know who voices Bluey though. They don't put it in the credits.
It's like an Australian
What do you
child.
mean, voice.
Bluey is a cartoon. Pension. It's an animated series.
Sorry.
It's just like the tension of Ben trying to book Chappie to be on the show recently.
I mean, we got film director Barbie here.
We do have film director Barbie.
It's not hard.
She's pretty quiet though, I will say.
Yes, she's not saying it.
Well, because she's not on mic. She has headphones, but she's not on mic.
We haven't done the levels.
David?
Yes.
Do you hear that?
Nope.
You know what that sound is?
What was it?
The thick of summer.
Oh. It does. That is how it feels walking around right now. Like you're walking through Jell-O.
And I'm walking through these thick streets.
Yeah.
This thick air, this thick summer heat.
You try to light a cigarette, it just too moist.
The cigarette lights me. That's what happens. David, and you know what? You know why?
Why?
Because I'm just looking for some wholesome, convenient meals to support sunny, active days, and I can't find them anywhere.
How about Factor? America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit.
I feel foolish.
It'll help you fuel up fast with
Okay.
flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track reaching your goals. Wow. Summer defeated.
I was expecting to lose time, eat poorly, and you're wildly off track, but that's 3 for
Which
3.
is, to be clear, your usual MO.
That's morning and night.
Look, with Factor, you can skip the extra trip to the grocery store, all that chopping and prepping and cleaning up. It's all fresh food. It's never frozen. Meals are ready in 2 minutes. You just have to heat and enjoy, then get back outside and soak up that warm weather.
Oh, I love this warm weather.
We got, yeah.
I want to soak it.
You are soaking in it.
Ooh, I'm soaking in it.
Look, they got nice, high-quality ingredients. Broccolini, leeks, asparagus, very seasonal.
Yeah.
34-plus weekly restaurant-quality options like bruschetta, shrimp, risotto.
I believe it's bruschetta.
Bruschetta, green goddess chicken, grilled steakhouse filet mignon, ready in just 2 minutes. If you're too busy running around the day to think about lunch, just keep up your energy with lunch to go.
Lunch to go.
Got some green bowls, salad toppers, easy to eat on the go, no microwave required. And they've got calorie smart meals that are around or less than 50 calories per serving.
I've heard of Emmy winner Gene Smart, but Calorie Smart?
They got all other kinds of stuff too. Keto, vegan and veggie, protein plus. It's all prepared by chefs and approved by dietitians.
Sure.
To meet whatever goal you're looking for. And they offset 100% of their delivery emissions, source 100% renewable energy for their production sites and offices, and have sustainably sourced seafood in the meals, so they're not messing with the environment too much.
I love that. Look, if you want to be like Sully and do it in July, what you should do is get Factor and enjoy eating well. I'm just saying that because the prompt starts with this July.
Yes, I know that.
Without the hassle, you simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready in just 2 minutes, no prep, no mess.
Head to factormeals.com/check50 and use code check50 to get 50% off. That's code check50 at factormeals.com/check50 to get 50% off. Okay, Oppenheimer. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, released July 21st, 2023.
Just, to sort of quickly line things up, right? It's like Nolan's this guy. We many times on the podcast have bemoaned the step that is missing from most people's career, which is the insomnia between Memento and Batman, right? You sort of get to level up with bigger stars and a bigger budget, but you're not immediately thrown into franchise churn.
Sure.
And Batman Begins was this example of like, we feel so defeated by Batman and Robin, we got to let you do whatever you want. He makes something that's very much him.
Okay. Are you recapping Nolan's whole career right now?
I'm doing a very brief overview to build to a very specific
I thought
point.
you were going to be like, okay, so let's go back to 1939.
All right,
Hitler invades Poland.
They're down to earth.
It's another career worth looking at.
Hitler? I don't think
Not
so.
in a good way. I'm not saying we should cover
we're
him.
gonna look at it.
I'm not saying we should cover him. It was influential.
Okay.
I don't like the guy
all right.
at all.
All right.
In fact,
I'm downshifting
I
on
quite
this.
dislike him.
Okay.
On a personal level.
Okay.
I disagree with a lot of what he's done.
Nolan. Let's just keep it moving.
I'd be pretty unambiguous
Stop
here.
laughing, Marie, because we're going to have to cut this.
Not a fan of the fellow.
Uh-huh.
We should leave this in.
No, I'm not sure we should. I don't know.
It's the Norm Macdonald bit, the Hitler, the more I read about this guy, the less I like him.
The less I like him.
Sorry.
I mean.
Anyway, Christopher Nolan.
But most of his films are being made at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Dark Knight is the moment where it's like, holy fucking shit. And then his blank check after that is Inception, when that is almost as big as Dark Knight. It's like, oh, wow, this guy can do anything he wants. Yeah. Continues to have this run where he gets to write the rules of his career. And running parallel with that is him more and more taking on this role as the spokesperson of what he thinks is like the culture of cinema that needs to be preserved, what he feels like is at stake, is in danger, right?
100%. He is a deep and vocal advocate for seeing movies in a movie theater, and for the use of large format filming, to emphasize the power of cinema.
Yeah, and a lot of the covering of him is like, is he a weird Luddite? He doesn't have a smartphone. He doesn't check emails. Right, all these things. So this obviously all builds to Tenet, which is just set up as another Chris Nolan movie.
Sure.
Here's just going to be another one, another big summer heady
I think also he seemed to have been settling into this sort of like, I'm going to go like slightly more prestige, slightly more genre. Like I'll flip back and forth.
That was his
Dunkirk.
version of the one for me, one for them.
Dunkirk was a little more, still a big,
That's
action-y movie.
All
but
of them
more,
were still hitting. None of them are too esoteric to play with mainstream audiences.
But Tenet was more like, let me, do sort of a sci-fi James Bond movie, blah, blah, blah.
I think it was on the Big Picture podcast they talked about, it felt like Dunkirk and Tenet back to back were him sort of like splitting his own atom.
His interests.
Right?
Yes. You know what Tenet does?
What?
Fuck all day and night. Good Lord. That movie is absolute sex. For a sexless film.
Tenet, they should have called it tantric. But the way you're describing it.
I'm eager to see it again. I really hope they put it back in IMAX.
That's what I want. I want my chance to see that movie in IMAX.
Look,
I saw it in IMAX. I went to Lincoln Square and saw it, but I just was so overwhelmed being back in a movie theater.
Yeah.
What's this, swill on the schedule in sort of late August or whatever?
Yeah.
Clear it out. Give me Tenet.
The Mighty movie has a 6-week hold on the IMAX.
What is the Mighty movie?
The Paw Patrol
movie.
Jesus, they're gonna come fucking arrest me. Throw me in their fire truck.
Yeah.
Tenet F's so hard, and in retrospect, the movie made $360 million in 2020. I mean, it did pretty good. I mean, it's sort of impossible to kind of evaluate that movie.
I think you and I were talking about this, that like Tenet was quietly, in certain ways, kind of the best thing that could happen for him. And that like he was getting to this point in his career where it's like, well, now the pressure and the expectation is so high on each of his movies because the guy essentially doesn't miss.
Right.
He hasn't whiffed, right? And even
so
like
he whiffs, but it's like sort of an understandable whiff or whatever.
Right. Because
it's out of his control.
Yeah, he whiffs-ish.
I do think if that movie had come out in a normal world, it might have been seen as a bit of a disappointment because it is a very elusive movie.
It's hard to know, though. It might have done well.
Maybe. Who knows?
We have no idea.
Who knows? But like,
we don't know.
We were saying his worst movie, I think most people think, is Dark Knight Rises.
I think that, yeah, sure. I mean, I think Following is whatever. Maybe,
sure.
Maybe excluding. His worst major movie is Dark Knight Rises,
right.
I would say.
A movie
Some people love it.
Made a metric shit ton of money.
Yeah,
that does have its big defenders, and also at the time was positively received. Its sort of reputation has gone through weird shifts over time, over the last decade, right?
Yeah.
But Tenet's the one that maybe would have divided people a little bit more, and it came out in such weird circumstances. But part of those circumstances were that Nolan felt this pressure of like, I can feel cinema culture slipping away. We have to reopen the theaters. We have to get this movie in theaters. And he pushed sooner than he should have. And as you said, you step back, it's insane that movie made $60 million coming out when it did.
Sure, and 360.
That's
worldwide.
Bananas. It basically had 4 to 5 months where there was nothing else playing in theaters. It was September to December, basically, right?
Yeah, sure. That whole time is a bit of a blur.
Same.
Yeah.
But it did create this odd thing of like, oh, there's this Christopher Nolan movie that kind of half doesn't exist, right? Yeah. And that people saw in this very trickled way. Very few people saw it in IMAX. They see it mostly at home. Whatever. And then there's this sort of whole Warner Brothers. They announced they're going to put all their 2022 movies on HBO. 2021. Jesus. On HBO Max, and Nolan is just like, fuck this. Yeah. HBO Max, worst streaming service. I'm leaving. I'm going to Universal. Right? Or rather, he said, I'm a free agent.
I'm a free agent. Apparently, Paramount dropped out fast because they were also making a lot of like, streaming is the future noise. Sure. And so he was like, not interested. So I think the major players for his business were basically Sony and Universal.
Yes.
And he really likes Donna Langley, who runs Universal.
Yes.
And she's more old school, I would say. And
I think so.
And he probably responded to that, and they gave him a big budget. Yeah, obviously, 100-day exclusive theater. We're not going to put it on streaming for a long time.
Yes.
And they cleared out the schedule where it's like there's no universal release, like 3 weeks either side.
Right.
They gave him a real sweetheart deal.
They rolled out the red carpet. But as you said, when he goes like, I'm a free agent now, you go, every fucking studio in Hollywood is going to be fighting to get Nolan, a guy who has pretty much been loyal to one studio from the moment he became the biggest director alive. And it wasn't even like, at a certain point, he's no longer the biggest director of his generation. It's like Spielberg's name doesn't mean as much as it used to general audiences. Tarantino does, but not at the same level that Nolan does. Like his movies just fucking pack them in.
Yeah. Like someone like Tarantino maybe is more of a celebrity figure, but
As a
his
person.
movies are not made for as wide an audience, even though his movies do really well.
Totally.
Spielberg makes a lot of movies.
Yes.
And yeah, he's not a
And
guaranteed.
there used to be a halo effect where all Spielberg movies.
There's still something of one, but yes, no, he doesn't. And he doesn't. Also, Spielberg just doesn't feel commercially minded as much anymore. Like I feel like he's just kind of like, I'm doing my shit over here.
And when he tries to make a commercial movie, it arguably now works less well than when he just does whatever interests him at that moment.
Ready Player One's a masterpiece.
I agree. But wait, question.
Yeah.
Would you call Oppenheimer a commercially minded
Well,
film?
No, this is my
don't
point.
know.
This is my point. The moment that he's a free agent, you're like, everyone's going to be fighting over him. And then the story comes out, what he wants to do is J. Robert Oppenheimer. Right. And you go like, oh, but he's going to want to do it his way. He's not going to go, let me make a little $20 million palate cleanser movie. Yeah. He's going to want to make a Nolan-sized harrowing drama about, what is possibly the most devastating decision in human history.
Sure.
Right? The fact that like Universal roll out the red carpet for him was very exciting, but I have for the last couple of years been like, is this going to blow up in everyone's face?
Pun intended.
You were wrong.
I'm excited to see this movie.
Yeah.
Is him insisting on doing it his way at this size, at this scale, and this style and everything? Is this going to lead to a moment where it's like, auteur cinema is dead, we cannot indulge these people?
No.
We are so back.
We're so back.
We're so back.
I mean, look, I'll also say,
yes,
it's even if it's still a World War II movie of sorts. It's got that hook for, older audiences.
And he was able to get a lot of big ass stars and supporting roles.
Anyone in the world wants to work with him.
Yes.
Everyone. I mean, casting RDJ is the perfect example of him being like, I'm going to meeting with anyone and they'll say yes.
Yeah.
Like, who would say no to him? Daniel Day-Lewis.
Right.
Maybe.
People who are retired.
That's
Hackman.
it. No, Hackman would do it.
Hackman would do it.
Yeah. You have to play Fat Man. He's like, all right.
Almost
packing on the pounds.
Almost everyone who has more than 5 lines in this movie has at one point been number 1 on a call sheet.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
At some level, at some scale, some sort of project.
Well, no. I was like going to say Josh Peck, Drake, and Josh, but then was he probably number 1 on the whackness?
Of course he was.
Number 1 on the whackness.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, even if everyone here isn't like a total movie star, almost everyone who speaks has at one point had to carry a thing themselves.
You think that's why he cast Thirlby as well? He's like going up to them and said, I love the whackness.
But this is what I find so fascinating about him. is you're like,
Kingsley was selling Italian oysters.
Maybe he's seen the whackness 4 times.
He's probably seen the fucking whackness. We all saw the whackness. Admit it, you saw it.
I actually didn't.
I didn't either.
It's not bad.
Wasn't it about NYU? Wasn't it like Washington Square
it's
Park
Jonathan
movie?
Levine. It's what's his name? The 50-50 guy.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that movie either.
It's got Olivia Thirlby in it, my crush at the time. I loved her. I still love her.
Yeah, it's so funny
in
how
2008, I really loved her.
He's got this parallel track thing, right? Where it's like he loves to take guys like Modine and like
Modine's been number 1 on the fucking call sheet.
Of course he has. Rutger Hauer.
Yep. Tom Berenger. There's a lot of names like this. Yes,
right. These guys where they were sort of like briefly leading men in the
guys
80s.
Who got some weight. They got a little ballast.
Right.
Eric Roberts.
And then they maybe ended up a little bit in the wilderness. They kept working, but they weren't given the serious projects. And he loves to give them these meaty supporting roles. And then he also loves his Wes Bentleys, his Josh Hartnett's, his Olivia Thirlby's.
Fucking wimpy kid.
Right. But this movie also having like
rules.
Alden and Dane DeHaan, where it's like, here are guys that Hollywood started to like put all their weight behind, put the pressure on them, then very quickly kind of discarded them and went, maybe you don't have what it takes. And he's like, there's a reason they were in the conversation.
Well,
give them a couple scenes with some real meat, and they'll just show you they're a steady hand. They know what they're doing.
I think there's more going on than that, though. And we should talk about this film in general. But I do think he also knows there are no composite characters in this film.
Yes.
So he's not doing the usual shortcutting you would use for a biographical film. He knows if you just fucking recognize the guy's face.
Huge.
When he pops back up 20 minutes later, he'll be like, yeah, that guy. Right. I saw, fucking Dane DeHaan. I get it. I get who he is.
You need these people pinned in your mind.
And he always has been and is such a good caster of actors.
Yes.
He just everyone in this movie fits exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And maybe there's no one in this movie where you're like, wow, that's a really surprising choice. Like everyone, you're kind of like, yeah, he makes sense to do this. Hartnett is maybe the closest.
I would
But
say.
I think he works so well.
Rock solid.
To be clear, I love it. But
Yeah.
he's the one where you're kind of like, oh, I really haven't seen him do this before.
Right.
No,
I guess.
no,
Yeah.
no.
I mean,
Although I never checked in with old Penny Dreadful. I know he was.
But that he's like a wolf man. I don't think it's this.
Right.
I
Maybe
don't
he's
think
a smart wolf
Okay.
man. No, I just also love that they're all theoretical physicists. They're all these like, nerds with lunch pails. And then
Right.
he's the one like practical physicist and he's like beefy boy.
Yeah, he's just like a nice Midwestern man.
He's
Which
like,
I
I
was
built
like,
a cyclotron. You
I
want to
think
check it
Josh
out?
Hartnett is from Minnesota or
You
something.
want to
I
shoot
looked
some
it up.
atoms
Yeah.
around? Where's
Yeah.
he from? Let's
I
find
think he's
out.
from
I
Minnesota.
think he is.
Well, you know what?
What?
Why don't I just Google him and then we'll get the answer for sure and then
Minne-
we'll all be happy.
Minnesota nice.
Looks like he's from a little place called Minnesota.
Wow.
Told ya.
Land of a
Yeah.
I
thousand
told ya.
lakes. 10,000? They got a lot of lakes.
Also,
I
talk
don't
about a guy who has grown into his look.
But that's also with Nolan. I think he
Yes.
really likes the guy who's been here for 10, 20 years and
Yep.
has settled into their
Has
look.
some history, has some weight, as you said.
Even when he's cast in Wimpy Kid,
Yeah.
he's like, well, you've been,
By the
you
way,
had
I'm
your
sorry.
time with Wimpy Kid. I know he's not Wimpy Kid. He's
Roderick.
the
He's
other
Roderick.
one.
and
Yeah,
Broderick
yeah.
rules.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That's
Just
the
that-
spin-off.
The second.
Is he Wimpy Kid's friend or
Yes.
enemy?
No. Wait a second
I asked if
here.
he was friend or enemy.
He is Wimpy Kid's bully older brother. Too
older
cool
brother.
for school. And the second Wimpy Kid movie in the original franchise, before they reboot it, the first of 2 times, is called Roderick Rules. The subtitle is Roderick Rules.
Right.
And it is that the parents, who I believe are Steve Zahn and Rachel Harris in the original,
Sounds right.
they leave Wimpy Kid alone for the weekend with Roderick.
Roderick. Devin Bostick is the actor. to be
Rules.
clear. Yeah.
He is in charge, and he decides to throw a big ass party in which no alcohol is drank because the movie is PG.
And do you know what Devin Bostick is in as well?
Oh,
He is in Okja, but do you know what else he's in?
what?
Saw 6. It all comes
He's in
back to
Saw
Saw 6.
6?
David?
He is. I don't know what he does there. I just
Wait,
know he's in it.
is Shawnee Smith in Saw 6?
Well, she's in a lot of
She's
Saws.
in almost all of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. She's
Okay.
in most Saws.
We can't
We're
get
not
into
doing
Becker talk.
We're not
We
doing
can't
Becker.
do it. We can't do it.
So,
Ben, just play the theme song for like 2 seconds and then cut it out.
glad you said no to that. Okay, so what's most interesting about this film to me is that it was conceived, put together, and written all post Tenet.
Yes.
Which is how Nolan operates. I know that he's very much
Yep.
like, I work on the movie I'm working on, and then when it's done, I look for the next thing, and then I work on that.
So when he had such a comfortable home at Warner Brothers, it's just like, I decide what I want to do, and then I just bring it to them as a thing.
I get that. I get that
Right.
the idea that like he can move heaven and earth in terms of logistics.
Yeah.
I'm just like, so this is based on a biography written
Yeah.
in 2005 called American Prometheus that won the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
By Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin. I have read this book.
Okay.
Congratulations, David.
And let me tell you,
Yeah.
it's very good. Well, this fucker is a doorstop. It's a big bullet.
Yeah.
Big ass
Didn't it
book.
take him like 20 years to write
Yeah,
it?
it's
Yeah.
like, I mean,
Yeah.
and
Well, it was
obviously
like 20 years to do all the
Research and all that.
then,
Right,
Yeah.
right,
yeah.
right.
And it's a very, very comprehensive work that's
Yeah.
like really trying to take you through like every single person he knew and all. It just, I can't imagine picking up this book and being like, yeah, I could fucking squeeze this thing into a screenplay. Like,
Well, Pattinson gives him the book.
no.
No?
Pattinson gave him, this is very interesting.
Okay.
So Robert Pattinson, by the way, sounds like a great gift giver because
Yeah.
post Tenet, he gives him Oppenheimer's like speeches
Oh.
packaged
okay.
up together as a wrap gift because of course in Tenet they mention
Yes.
the sort of Oppenheimer's fear that he was about to ignite the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And he's Pattinson, who just, I swear to God, the sexiest, smartest guy. He said he felt that Tenet's main idea was, what if you could uninvent an awful technology? What if you
Right.
could put toothpaste back in the tube?
Right.
Because of course Tenet is about what if goes backwards.
What
Yes.
if?
What if thing
What
goes
if?
backwards?
Right.
Yes.
And what if friends all along?
So he gives this, yeah, of course, he gives this to Nolan, and Nolan's like, and then he learns of this book, which has been optioned by Charles Roven because James Woods, the actor,
Yes.
gave it to him.
Wait.
Yes, that's James Woods. Yes, that James Woods.
because we saw that credit and assumed it had to be someone.
A different
Nope.
James Woods. What?
So this was because Roven was his main producer at Warner Brothers
Yes.
for years.
So you mean to tell me that James Woods gets a cut of the box office receipts for this movie?
Possibly. I mean,
All right,
money's
well,
flowing in all kinds of directions.
No
in
one should
Hollywood.
see Oppenheimer.
Wait a
Everyone goes
second.
to Barbie.
Sam Mendes had been initially interested in making an Oppenheimer
This is set up
movie.
like early 2000s.
Yeah, and Mendes makes sense.
The book is 2005.
Five, correct.
Okay, yeah.
This book gets put in Nolan's hands, and it's announced in September 2021 that he will write this book. So he probably wrote this script
They'll
over
write
the summer.
the movie. Yes.
Write this movie.
Yeah, direct this.
He's going to write the book, actually.
Yeah,
he was
he's
like,
gonna
I read the
rewrite
book
it.
and I'm going to do a better job.
Yeah.
As I said, his services are up for grabs when Universal gets them.
Yeah.
But he's put the whole fucking book into this script.
Yeah.
Which seems like just like a tough job. He said, I'm sure you've read this script, that his famed sort of Howard Hughes book script.
Yes.
A biopic he wrote like 20 years
That
ago
he
that
was
he
supposed to
never
do with Jim
made.
Carrey.
He was going to make it with Jim Carrey, and he never made it because of The Aviator.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, like, that really taught me how to write a biopic.
Right.
And I'm doing here what I was doing there,
He's not obviously reusing material, but he's reusing the way he cracked it.
Yes.
Right. Whatever it is.
Which is very interesting.
David, let's admit also the major X factor here is the pandemic.
Yeah,
right?
no,
You're
he's
saying how
probably
do you
got
put it
time on
together
his
so
hands, but
quickly?
still, he's got like fucking 4 kids to
Totally.
raise.
But we were texting with JD and saying like how interesting it is that it feels like Asteroid City, Barbie, and Oppenheimer. 3 movies by 3 of our like biggest kind of name brand auteurs we have working today, right?
Yeah.
Or all these like star-studded, everyone's stuck in the middle of the desert. Who am I?
True.
What am I doing?
Sure.
What is my life about movies? These weird existential crisis movies that are all kind of about like, I mean, Asteroid City makes it literal that there is a quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
But all of them are these sort of weird formed intentional bubble societies stranded in the middle of nowhere. And it does feel like all 3 came out of these people being like, what do I write now? Like in this destabilized time.
Yeah.
And
No, for sure. I'm sure the end of the world is on his mind in a different way.
yeah.
And obviously this film does feel like more current because we've been talking about nuclear war more
Yes.
in recent times because of Russia.
Yes, but also all these other, I mean, the way we talk
There's
about
also
technology, the way we talk about the tiny decisions made in the lead up to and during the pandemic that had these ripple effects that were so great, I think is the number one thing this movie is about, which I think is interesting, is like just the position of being placed in a position where you have been given the power to make an incredibly consequential decision under intense pressure and a decision that cannot be undone, right? You saying the framing of the Tenet question, like what if you could undo a bad invention? And this is the opposite of that movie. This is what do you do after you've done that?
Right. That's part of what this movie is about.
Right.
Seems confounding for some. I've seen some complaints about the latter act of this movie. Don't really understand that, but
it's crucially important.
Yes.
Right.
And obviously it's very important to the biography, because it's a huge part of his life, But I think Nolan's trying to understand as well. I have things to say about this, but why did he put himself through this hearing when he knew he was going to lose his security clearance and all that, which we can talk about.
Yeah, that's it. I think I've seen a lot of readings of this movie that are sort of saying well, Nolan relates to Oppenheimer. Nolan is using Oppenheimer as a surrogate character. And I think it's that he fundamentally is kind of confused by Oppenheimer as a guy. Fair. This is a movie about him trying to crack him. I think it's the whole reason that the narrative is so fractured, because his final conclusion is this guy was kind of unknowable, I think, to himself. There's the line Benny Safdie's character has about the great sphinx of modern science or whatever. It feels like the only person in this movie who actually knows him is Kitty. To some degree,
extent.
It feels
she at least knows his flaws and his inner turmoil.
She has him read better than he knows himself. And so much of this story is about this film starts out. I keep on when I'm revisiting this movie in my mind, getting ready to talk about it for this episode, the image I keep on going back to is him in university in the first 20 minutes of the movie when he's lying awake in bed at night, and it looks like he's having a nervous breakdown. He's drenched in sweat and floppy haired and whatever. and he's like seeing these like physics spirals over his head. And it's like this movie starts and he's a guy who basically it hurts him to be alive.
Yes, he can sort of. That's how Nolan is representing it, right? That he can like see the world in a subatomic way, right?
And he
but
cannot
that's very
function.
That's a big part of his biography.
Not only
he struggled a lot in his 20s.
Not only can he like not function socially engaging with other people, but he also isn't even doing well in classes. His brain is like such active chaos that it's like he just feels like a raw nerve of a human being where you're like, well, this guy's not going to make it to 25.
He was good at theory, bad at lab.
Yes.
It wasn't good at the practical stuff.
Right.
Yes.
And then you have this moment, not to jump around, but this is all in the first half an hour when he finally meets Florence Pugh's character, Tatlock. And he offhandedly mentions that he like had years in therapy, right?
Yes.
That this Apple incident where he attempted to poison a teacher that no one could really totally make sense of.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a malicious act, he said himself, I admired the man greatly. I don't know why I did it, you know? And that he's come out of therapy on the other side, and he's now basically, like Batman, created this like character, right? At this point, he is like a guy who's developed a look, a voice, a style. Part of his thing is being like this great unknowable, reputation precedes him. Here's this horn dog who chain smokes cigarettes and dresses like a cowboy.
Fucking hot as shit.
Asks the questions that everyone else is afraid to ask, you know? But it's like, it's all like Batman. It's like a suit of armor he's placed around him. It's a persona he's created to try to push his ideas into the world. And that persona is basically like exploited by everyone around him. Everyone uses that to their own ends, you know? He thinks he intimidates everyone else, and he, over the course of the movie, realizes that like everyone else can see through the fundamental vulnerability of him. And how that can be manipulated and how it can be used in the ways that benefits them. Alyssa Wilkinson wrote a really good review of this movie where I think she just kind of pinned it, where she said, like, it's ultimately a movie about power and about, like, the fascination of who wields power and how do you get power, right? And the whole, like, Oppenheimer versus Strauss double narrative is one guy who is in pursuit of power as means to an end. He just likes the idea of power. He likes the idea of building himself out of dirt and rising to the top of American politics.
Sure.
To what end? Who fucking knows? He doesn't seem to have anything he really cares about or wants to accomplish.
Well, okay, go on.
Right?
Go on. Finish your point, and then I can...
Oppenheimer is a guy who has this amazing ability and is like all about like understanding, right? How do we like create a greater understanding of our world, a greater control of our universe, our power, you know? Exploration, like expansion, all this sort of stuff. Right. But in order to do that, he needs to accumulate power. He needs to have the power to actually be given the opportunity, the resources, you know, be granted the ears to get those things done. And in order to do that, you either need to start making concessions in your own life in order to accrue that power personally, at some sacrifice to your humanity usually, or you get in bed with people who wield that power and could throw it over you, and then you give them some control over your life.
Sure. I mean, okay. A lot to think about.
Yeah.
That's my main read.
Okay. Well, Louis Strauss is like, he is a figure of small c American conservatism, like, which dominated American culture after the war. And like he was his mentor was Herbert Hoover, who is the king of small c conservatism. And like, you know, just the idea of like less government, business is best. This is a thriving nation. We want to encourage that by, not, anti-Rooseveltian sort of, anti-New Deal.
Right.
And that is the culture that enveloped to me like Oppenheimer's creations and whatever, the war, post-war society, because so much of what happened with nuclear weapons is preventable in Oppenheimer's head, I think, whether or not it's true. Like, he's like, we didn't have to do this. Like,
right.
And obviously he feels guilt or responsibility or whatever for creating the thing, but he's also like, I didn't know you were going to make 1 million of them. Like, and maybe I should have. And I feel like Nolan is like seeing Strauss as like, this is the perfect representation of the type of paranoid, egotistical, sort of country first thinking that led us down the road of like, well, we got to make more. We got to make the bigger one. We got to be ahead always, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, Strauss had like, he's like you said, he's, he made himself out of nothing. So he saw himself as like an American ideal in that way. Like, here I am, a Jewish kid, born in poverty. Like, here I am on top of the world. Like, that's what we need this country to be.
But then it's, what's your skill set? Being on top of the world.
Yeah, he's so shoes. He's good at it, I guess. I don't know. Business.
Right. The thing that I latched onto thematically was the difference between theory and practice.
Sure.
Which Oppenheimer is a theory guy.
He's all theory,
the
baby.
Theory guy.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when someone who is an ideas person or a creative gets put in a position where they have to make something?
Well, not only that, he's handed tremendous power, like you're saying, and freedom.
Yeah.
Because we need you right now. Like, and you're the guy who knows how to do this. So you want to build a city in your favorite place on Earth, which is what New Mexico was to him.
Right.
Fine. Unlimited money. You want all your friends to come here? Great. You guys all want to get together and fucking bandy about ideas? Cool. And then they're like, we think we made a bomb. The military's like, great, put it in a box. See you later. We'll call you.
Right.
Like, and they're like, well, what are you going to do with it? And they're like, we're not having a conversation anymore. Like, you did what you were supposed to do.
Right.
The most devastating moment in the movie is those bombs getting wheeled off. And you're like, wait a second, is that it? Like, that's clearly what they're all like, oh shit. Okay, what are you going to do? Should we, it's amazing. It's amazing stuff. Like,
I don't think for a second that Nolan is putting himself on the same plane of importance as Robert Oppenheimer.
You're saying Oppenheimer's like the most important person who ever lived, right?
Right.
Yes, because he's like at the focus of this moment.
I think the thing he's relating to on a micro level is that within his tiny little sphere of just the world of film culture, right, which is not incredibly important in the grand scheme of humanity.
It's the most important thing in the world.
To us, in this room.
To everyone, everywhere. Right?
It's the most important thing.
It's the most important fucking thing in the world.
But that he has become a guy where the entire industry kind of hangs on his every word. And he understands that any interview he gives, any choice he makes in his career... So you're saying this
is how he relates, sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
It does move the winds of the industry, right?
I mean, my read on that is he made something that then contributed to the deaths...
The Dark Knight.
Well, The Dark Knight Rises.
Literally, The Dark Knight Rises, the death of 12 people, 70 people are injured.
Take it differently. He made The Dark Knight, and it contributed to the death of cinema.
Yeah, but
I know, but it's all of this.
But people actually died.
I think he has had. I think he has several examples of movies in his career that like fundamentally shifted the culture in one way or another, right? So you have like the mass shooting at The Dark Knight Rises. You have The Dark Knight being the movie that Hollywood's going to break itself trying to chase and replicate, right? And then you have Tenet, which is him being like, I wield the power. Everyone listens to me. What I choose to do with this moment,
save cinema
at this
right
movie,
now. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I can do it. Yeah.
Right. And it didn't work. Did it have catastrophic results? No, but it didn't work. He misjudged that moment.
He did. Especially if he was the one pushing, and I think, a lot of reporting said he was pushing, like, no, we can do it this year. We don't need to wait.
So that's the thing. I think Nolan could very clearly outline to you what he was thinking at every moment, and I think they're pretty moral decisions or reasoned decisions in all of the steps of his career, versus a guy like Oppenheimer, where I think he himself struggles with why he was doing anything at any moment. But I think that's the thing he's relating to, is a guy who's suddenly put in that position where, is Louis Strauss that different than a studio head, right? The people like Matt Damon who are saying, here you go, we'll give you $6 billion and we'll build a town and you assemble your own crew. Is that not unlike, saying, here's your budget, go put together your cast, put together your whatever, and at a certain moment, we're going to put everything you gave us in a crate and we're going to sell it. And if it doesn't work to serve our needs, you're fucking out in the road. We kick you to the dirt.
Now, isn't it, though, that as someone who's obsessed with like stars exploding, that if you actually want to not just theorize, but make the thing, that you don't have a lot of options.
Right.
I mean, it almost would probably come down to exclusively working with the U.S. military.
They certainly, yes.
There not really other places that you can go.
There are, but in terms of practical applications.
Can I ask you guys a general question?
Yeah.
How do you feel about science?
Love it. What do you mean?
Well, like, what's your...
cool.
Yeah, but like, what science are you into?
So
How much
I'm bad
science
at science.
Okay.
I didn't get good grades at it because I'm not smart in that way, or I didn't apply myself in that way. I'm bad at math.
Me
So I was
too.
particularly bad at physics, which is very mathy.
I never took physics.
I was better at chemistry, but I never did. I did high school science.
Right.
My dad loved science, and he would read countless books, nonfiction books. He read all the fucking. He was obsessed with science. So a lot of my interest, mostly I like space. That's where my science interest, I feel like, manifests mainly.
Ben, are you a science guy?
Big.
I wasn't good at it in school, but I've always loved science.
You sent a pretty radical text yesterday, Ben.
Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, I was joking somewhat.
What was your text?
I basically just said, I was very surprised to walk away from this movie so thrilled and felt like, wow, science is cool. But there's something about this particular time that I think is really just fascinating. It's so new, all of this, just the discovery of a black hole. That's so fucking cool.
It's pretty cool.
Come on.
I
you
agree.
could, on a piece of paper, write down an equation and be like, well, that's
that's where I'm lost, but I'm glad they can do it.
I mean, I thought that the movie did a good job of not making me feel completely lost by all of the science talk.
I think he mostly skims through that, which I'll say honestly, the book American Prometheus does too. The book is not really about science.
Right.
It's more about this man and his youth, as an anxious student, and then his young manhood as a sort of quasi-communist or fellow traveler, and who he knew, and the whole sort of Berkeley scene of scientists and all that. And then the Manhattan Project, and then, the aftermath of celebrity scientists, and then, being dragged in the public square. And so, and then also just that he constantly was fucking left and right.
Important. If I can just read Ben's text verbatim, it was, I'm very surprised to report that I think being a scientist was cool at one time.
So not now?
I don't know about now.
Okay.
And then
they might be up to some cool stuff.
They might be up to some cool stuff for sure. I'm sure people are.
His follow-up text was, and being a doll is a weird job.
Well, that was Marie Bardi.
Marie Bardi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ben, if you went to CERN, would that be cool? Over in Switzerland.
What? I don't even know what that is.
It's the Center for Nuclear Research.
Particle.
It's where they have particle accelerators. It's mile-long tunnels that they shoot atoms at each other.
Because they did that sort of thing recently that I feel like, unfortunately, the owner of X was involved with in some way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That thing where he rebranded Twitter as X, and it's cool, and we all like it, and we're going to make it a bank?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm talking about, though? It was some sort of new form of centrifuge in some way.
It's the Large Hadron Collider, I believe is what you're talking about, probably.
Yes.
They're trying to find, quote unquote, the God particle.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Musk probably cares about that. I don't care about him though.
So I think he's an uncool scientist.
I mean, it is very cool to think of people in the 1920s, like Albert Einstein, writing down the way gravity works, if you extrapolate it, suggests that the thing in the center of our galaxy is a big black hole that's so heavy nothing can escape from it. I just figured this out through math. And then 100 years later, we're we can see the black hole.
Yeah.
He was right. He wrote that down on a piece of paper, but he was totally right. That's cool.
Yeah, but
it's just hard as a kid to be what are you talking about? The equations new, it's hard to represent. And this movie does do a good job representing the theory.
In that way of if you want to make a big, shiny movie at a certain level, you need to get in bed with these companies that we're increasingly finding are pretty fucking bone
Griff is dragging it back
evil.
to the movie metaphor.
No, because I think this is what, to Ben's point, it's if you want to make those breakthroughs, if you want to come to some greater understanding of the universe we live in and what is possible and how to harness it, you're probably going to have to do it for the military and turn it into a weapon. Or you're probably going to have to do it for Mr. X, who's doing it for whatever ends. It's it's these central questions of and it's a lot of the, on a much smaller scale, the Wind Rises thing, right?
Sure. Yeah, this is very, this has a bit of a Wind Rises vibe.
Right. Like,
for sure.
how are you going to get your money to make your thing? How are you going to get your support to make your thing? And if you are letting someone else give you that, then what are you giving them in return? And what are you sacrificing? And what are you handing off? What control are you losing?
There's a difference between this and The Wind Rises, as there's a difference between Oppenheimer and the protagonist of The Wind Rises, who is sort of quasi-fictional, quasi-real. But in The Wind Rises, he's truly like, I just wanted to make something beautiful. Right? You know, like, whereas in this is like, Oppenheimer knew what he's doing.
Absolutely.
He hears about people splitting atoms, and he's like, that could be used to make a bomb.
He also hears about what's happening to the Jews in Europe.
Absolutely. But I mean, and Nolan has acknowledged this, because Nolan's been hitting this kind of like he's the most important person who ever lived, right? Yeah. Nolan's acknowledged, like, look, if Oppenheimer didn't exist, someone else would have thought to make an atom bomb. It's not like he was the only
they have that line in the movie that's like, what are you thinking? Oh, what every other scientist is
everyone
thinking
had
now.
the same concept of, yes, you can create this gigantic energy reaction.
Right, because not only does he find out about splitting the atom and he go, oh, you could use this to make a bomb. His first thought is, they are going to use this to make a bomb.
So when you're reading...
It's all from this defensive posture of, like, now we know it's possible. Who's going to be the one to do it?
Well, it's fascinating that Einstein and one other scientist wrote that letter.
Right. So it's you're referring to the Einstein, I believe, Szilard is the other, Leo Szilard, the other scientist. But yes, they were both like, we just were in Germany not too long ago. We know who's over there, and we're worried that they will develop atom bombs. We need to do a nuclear program. When you read American Prometheus, you keep waiting for, and then they all sat down and were like, but, you know, what would the consequences be of us making this thing? And they don't really until afterwards.
Yeah.
I think it's because there's like,
because they were like, we have to beat the Nazis. And they were invigorated by like, we're discovering.
And also
like,
people at that time just dumped stuff into the river. And they didn't really think
people
about
did
it.
be dumping stuff. No, but I'm just like, you're wondering, like, when will they grapple with this? And you're sort of realizing as you're reading it, like, no, they had no time or whatever. They were just pushing it off. They weren't really, and of course, they're also thinking about it more as like against the Nazis. Like, okay, we'll be, you know, blowing up a Nazi fucking military base.
But also,
they're all theoretical physicists.
Yes, they're all scientists. They're not in the military.
But theoretical is the big thing.
Where it's in
they are
their
largely
heads. They don't know what it
Let's
actually
extrapolate.
means.
Where does this go? Right?
Heart and be practical.
Sure.
Heart and it be practical.
I just kept thinking throughout this movie about that exit interview the guy did who was the head of AI for Google and stepped down and wrote this letter that was like, we should all stop exploring this. And he basically said, I got hired onto this job and I thought, yeah, AI is probably the thing that will lead to our downfall in 80 years. And then through working on this for 5 years, I realized, oh, maybe it's more like 10. And you're like, well, that's the whole thing right there, that he was exploring a field that he thought would probably be destructive ultimately. But the destruction for him was much further off and much more abstract. In the process of working on it, only too late possibly did he then recognize, oh, this feels immediate. I have pushed something along to a point I no longer feel comfortable with, and now toothpaste out of the tube, can't put it back in. I can write a letter and tell people to stop, but they're not going to.
What a lot of people want to happen with AI is what Oppenheimer wanted to happen with nuclear weapons, where he's basically like, we have to hand this over to an international, you know, multi-country committee that's in charge of stuff that will stop stuff from going wrong.
Right.
And that may well happen with AI or may not, you know, who knows. But like, you know, that was his sort of plea post-war is like, let the United Nations take charge of this. Like, you know, nuclear power can be used for good, blah, blah, blah. You know, no one listened to him or whatever. People listened to him, but, you know, that's why obviously
he was railroaded and
he
silenced.
was eventually railroaded, and that's why Clint Eastwood actually directed this movie.
It's got both. And I was
this
saying
is a great take Griffin had.
To Marie and Marie's David.
Yes, my David.
The better David.
Yes.
No.
He's a good David.
I mean, he's my favorite David, but
I'm better than Ehrlich. I keep fucking drive-buying Ehrlich. I love
I
you,
know.
David.
It's been a rough couple of weeks for him on this podcast.
Sorry, I love you, David.
We love David Ehrlich.
And play the Becker theme song for 2 seconds, David.
No!
Yes! Come on!
No! I refuse.
Ludwig Göransson's score, very inspired by the Becker theme.
Absolutely.
Prove me wrong.
Yes.
What was your take? Your Clint-related take?
Hansen would have fit perfectly into this movie, let's say.
He would have.
Of course. Put him right where Modine is.
Yeah.
That
He
tall,
could have been the
classic gray
James
water.
Remar part.
Didn't Becker
guys.
wear a bow tie?
No,
Becker
Good Place
doesn't.
guy.
But yeah, he wears a bow tie later in Good Place.
Becker
Okay.
never wears it.
Becker
Becker's
wouldn't.
fucking unbuttoned.
Maybe he might have had a
Right.
tie.
I don't
but-
think he had
Damn
a
it!
tie.
I've been fucking brought it
Yeah,
up.
you did. Fuck
Shit.
you. What I was going to say,
Uh-huh.
I was saying to
Yes.
Marie's David on the escalator down, he has pulled off the rare double late period Eastwood narrative, which, David, we always joke on this podcast.
Yes, there's two kinds of Eastwood narratives. This guy was railroaded, or I'm guilty, send me to jail.
Yeah.
Me personally.
Right.
Right.
And this is a
Right.
movie about a guy getting railroaded, and when you go into his mind, he's like, I'm guilty, send me to jail.
Yeah.
Right?
So-
basically,
100%.
they did him wrong, but also he's like, I'm fucking garbage, and I'll never get
Yes,
over
just to get to the last thing in the movie.
Yeah.
Just to say it right now. You know,
Sure.
there's this big moment in the movie where Jason Clarke is basically like lambasting him, and almost everything in the scenes with Jason Clarke, the hearing,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's just the dialogue is just the actual words that were said.
Sure.
It's right from the record.
All of it.
I just
Yeah,
want
including
yeah.
the kitty disses about his
Yeah.
grammar.
Oh,
Yeah.
she fucking throws down.
She does absolutely.
I don't
body
like
him.
your phrase.
But
But I can I just quickly ask you because you read the book.
Mm.
There was one plot hole
Who
I
did?
could not.
David?
David.
Oh,
David
okay.
Sims read American Prometheus.
I did.
There was one plot hole I could not get my head around.
What's that?
At what moment in time did Oppenheimer fuck Jason Clarke's wife?
No. Jason Clarke is there
Because I know he fucks a lot of women who are married.
obviously Jason Clarke
and
plays
Jason
a lot
Clarke
of cucks.
hates him, and he plays a lot of cucks.
But
I was waiting for the
merely
connective
witnesses
tissue.
a cucking metaphorically.
It just felt like it was personal for Clarke, where there must have been.
I just think
the
it's like
classic
Clark is
cucking.
like, am I going to play a cuck? And no one's like,
Damn it.
No one's like,
I wanted to write down cuck on in
Jason
a
Cuck.
piece of paper and seal it in an
Wow.
envelope.
Should have done that.
Damn it.
No, but like, Nolan probably approaches Jason Clarke.
Yeah.
Would you like to be in my film? Here's
Right.
the script.
And it's
And
like, who
Clark's like
fucks my
flipping through it,
wife?
and he's like, who cucks me?
Yeah.
I don't understand. And Nolan's like, well, I don't know.
What
Come
does
on.
cuck
I always
mean?
get cucked in the movie. My wife cheats on me. Come on.
Right.
And Nolan's like, no, you're there to investigate a cucking. Like it's, you'll be methodically going through step by step
Hot world of cucking.
a famous cuckage.
Several, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
I forget, did you guys do this Nolan voice on the Nolan
No,
series?
this
I
is
don't
new.
think
I
so.
This is
This
new.
is new. I've been watching a lot of him recently.
Your character is a low T beta male, but he does not get cocked on camera.
He is a bit of a soy boy.
What the hell was I talking? I completely lost my train of
The
thought.
Chad Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
No, you wanted to talk about the last bit of the movie, Jason Clarke.
And Clark is
Yes.
reaming him out for essentially like, why didn't you say anything then? If you're
Right.
so fucking guilty now,
Yes.
if you're, then why didn't you? And it's this moment where Oppenheimer he has his answer, but he doesn't really have an answer. And Nolan starts to do the thing he does several times in the movie where you can hear noises in his head of the bombing and all that.
This
Very
movie's
powerful
basically
moment.
wall-to-wall music other than 5 moments where it
Score
cuts out
is-
and goes blank.
Incredible.
He builds it up to such a fever pitch that when he pulls it out, it really shocks you. And that's the one.
That's one of the moments where,
Yes.
right, yeah. But and then later, Kitty, says, speaks so loud. Is like, did you, submit yourself to that because you wanted,
Yeah.
someone to call you out, essentially? And it's American Prometheus.
Mhm.
Nolan opens the title with a title card. Opens the film with a title card explaining the myth of Prometheus. Like this is his Promethean torture.
Yes.
He is like, he's putting himself through this. Is Nolan's take,
Right.
as a form of torture because he feels he deserves it.
Yeah.
And Kitty basically says to him later, like, this isn't going to accomplish
Right.
anything.
And it's like that's to him. It's like I know I just need to suffer.
Yes.
Like I've decided I need to suffer, and this is the only way I
right.
know how.
One
Now
of-
that's a metaphorical take that
Absolutely.
no one has.
Right.
Like
One of the scenes I keep going back to.
Prometheus, was chained to a rock, and Bird would tear out his liver every day because he
'Cause
gave
he-
fire
yeah.
to humans,
Right,
which
right.
is Oppenheimer gave us fire.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's kind of an important thing. Fire.
Fire, very useful.
Yeah, but also pretty quickly turned to a weapon.
No, what do you mean? You make s'mores with it? That's what Prometheus is. He's saying. This is for s'more making only.
That's what Oppenheimer did too. So we've created the bomb, but please only put s'mores above
The idea is to make so many s'mores at
Yes.
once. You could
Yes.
feed the world.
it. The world's largest campfire. It's hard not. I'm trying to figure out what differentiates the Oppenheimer impression from
what?
From fucking Daniel Plainview.
I have a, what is he saying? I have a competition in me.
Yes.
What if Oppenheimer said that about the Nazis?
Yeah. What I was going to say.
What were you going
A scene I keep on going back to, because there are a couple scenes in this movie where I'm like, that's the whole movie right there. This is the whole central tension.
When they blow up the atom bomb?
With. That one is important.
It's quite powerful.
No, the scene where Oppenheimer rides up on his horse in his long trench coat with his flat hat. He looks like a fucking cowboy, right? He's created this, like, David's finger is going up, which I think is a tiny bit inappropriate. He rides by in the rain, but it looks like a fucking Unforgiven shot or something, right? And then he sees the flyer basically for like what is going to be the equivalent of a communist meeting amongst all the scientists
within Los Alamos,
right?
This thing, Project
this whole movie, this guy's had this uncomfortable position of like he wants to be on the right side of history, right? And it's such a confusing time where it's like, what's the greater threat? Is it fascism? Is it communism? Is it neither? Is it both? He seems pretty concrete on the fact that fascism's bad.
No, I think he was a fairly left-wing guy. It's just that he didn't have the super conviction in the way, when Hartnett's like, you better stop this shit if you want to run the Manhattan Project.
Right.
He's like, great, stopped. I'll stop.
Totally.
I'll stop. You know, like,
and I do think he did not in an intellectually dishonest way, but I do think the early part of the movie, he truly is like, I'm asking questions. I agree that there's stuff that's not right, and I'm trying to figure out what side I'm supposed to be on.
Money to the right people.
Totally.
He was a good.
Right.
Lefty.
But the Spanish Civil War thing, he was just, it feels like he's like, well, these people are clearly suffering.
My help. Yeah.
I'm not even getting invested in the larger part of this other than there are people I could give my money to who could use it right now, right? And he's constantly like, well, but don't do too much. Don't be too loud. Might get in the way of your career. You got to pick and choose, all this stuff. He's trying to apply strategy to all this shit, right? He sees this sign. He's gotten punished before in his life for engaging in these conversations, for going to these meetings, these parties, too much. He's basically just got out in time to still have a career, right? So he sees this sign, and he goes in there, and you're like, how is he going to play this?
Right.
Is this going to be like,
walking into a meeting,
don't you dare jeopardize this?
Right.
Is he going to be, is he going to consider their points, right? Because they're saying like, for the first moment, let's step back and question, is this bad if we let this happen?
Right. And
you watch him play, and I sort of expected the scene to play out of him being like, look, this is my job now. I'm in charge of this. We're too deep in.
Right.
I need to just throw the spin that it will take to convince them to settle them down. And he makes an argument that I think he genuinely largely believes.
Yeah.
Where he's like, we need to do this once, so it will never happen again. Right? This thing that was often said about like the
that was
bomb.
his line a lot of the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And
which was like sort of true until it's not true.
But he also was constantly reminding everyone that we're scientists, we build it, but we don't get to choose
the
what to do
military
with it.
makes whatever decision the military makes. He has this passive, like, maybe somewhat, simplistic thing of like, hey, we're just making an invention.
But this thing that comes up a lot in society where it's like, look, if I don't do X, then someone, not X, now I can't use that fucking letter.
You can. He doesn't own a letter.
If I don't do Y, someone else will do it.
Elon Musk has bought Y.
If I don't do Y, someone else will do it. They'll hire someone else to do it, right? And maybe that person has less scruples than I do. Maybe it's better for me to get into that room and I can at least try direct a thing that's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
Into a slightly better direction.
But then, like, what's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie? It's when he's in the room, as he was, while they're picking targets.
Yeah.
And James Remar, coming in and look, he doesn't actually whip out his dick like he did on Sex and the City. God bless him. Great moment for everybody.
Shows?
He sure does.
Yes, he does.
It's a great moment in Sex and the City. In this,
you know what his name is on Sex and the City?
What?
Richard.
But he's he's playing I believe he's playing the Secretary of Defense.
Yes.
And he has that sort of chilling thing, which apparently Remar found out himself and took to Nolan.
Right.
Of like, this guy actually honeymooned in Kyoto.
He would not want to.
So he wouldn't want to bomb it.
Yeah.
So he's like, so let's cross Kyoto off the list. Like in this way where you're like, Jesus Christ.
Right.
And Oppenheimer's basically just like a fucking, ham sandwich in there.
He basically
he's
says.
Jewish. He's a bologna sandwich.
No, but he says like 12 options, strike that, make that 11.
Yeah.
And you don't know why he's striking one, and you're just like, I guess he's going to move on from it. And then he sort of pulls his glasses down and like offers
cultural significance. My wife and I honeymooned there.
And everyone in the room laughs. And both times we've seen the movie, you hear the audience like suck in the breath and go like,
it's horrible.
Shit.
Yeah.
Right.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer is, not applying any muscle in that room, obviously.
And people are throwing out the question of like, is it good to give a warning so that the civilians can leave? Right. And they're like, well, if you warn them, like that question is disregarded within 5 seconds.
Same with like, why don't we just blow this up in a just to show how it works, and so they'll know or whatever.
That's so much of, I think, genuinely. Look, I don't think this movie is trying to exonerate Oppenheimer, and I don't think he's innocent. Right. Like he is a deeply conflicted.
It is investigating a complicated, inconsequential figure in history. That is what the film is doing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I think there is that part of him that at moments genuinely believes if the test goes well, they won't ever have to do it again.
Right, because they'll be so impressed by the force of this thing.
Right.
But he doesn't understand anything, and his knowledge of diplomacy is obviously just so basic.
Yeah.
And he's kind of saying to Groves, like, can we tell the Soviets now?
Yeah.
Can we tell? And he's like, yeah, sure. And they tell at Potsdam basically what happened was Truman said to Stalin, like, well, we got like a really big bomb. And Stalin was like, well, hope you use it against the Japanese. And what we now know is that Stalin already knew. Yeah. As is revealed in it, like that Stalin was getting info from Los Alamos. Yes. So we didn't have to tell him. But I think Oppenheimer's clearly hoping like, yeah, we'll tell Stalin and everyone will be like, oh, okay, great.
Back off.
Let's not use those though.
Right.
Let's just talk about it.
Right, but when Oppenheimer's in a room like that, his whole fucking like kind of play acting, what do they call it? The great salesman of science. Right. This persona he's built completely crumbles in a room with guys who wield actual power, not the power of intellect, of actual skill,
decision making,
of knowledge. That the ultimate superpower of guys like this are they're incredible strategic thinkers and they don't give a fuck, right? They are just so confident in everything they say at every moment. They are not internally conflicted. In the same way that James Remar is just like, I am happy to within the next 2 minutes pick which place we are going to decimate. This is a decision we can make quickly before lunch. By the way, I'm removing the one place that means a little something to me. It's all just like, look, let's just get this done with. It's devastating shit. David?
Yes.
Our next partner? AG1. Ever heard of them?
Of course I have.
They're the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health.
You drink it literally every day.
You got to do it. And you know why I gave it a try?
Why?
Because my body doesn't work.
But this is the thing. There's a lot of things out there that are trying to help you if your body don't feel right. Mm-hmm. Maybe you take a bunch of supplements.
I want a better gut health.
Right. Maybe you take a probiotic or
some people want maybe a little energy boost. Yeah,
the whole thing with AG1 is it's one thing.
It's one thing.
Okay? Because it can be hard to keep up with all these various supplement routines and all that.
Yeah.
It replaces your multivitamin. It replaces your probiotic and all the other stuff in one simple, science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients. You just take the formula, you put it in some water, you drink it.
Here's all you got to do. Ready?
Yep.
Done. It's that simple.
Why take a bunch of different things when you can just mix 1 scoop of powder and water once a day? Yeah. It's designed with these in mind so you can live your healthier and better life without having to complicate your routine.
They sent us the kit. Came with a little scoop. You don't even have to go searching for a scoop. They sent the scoop.
A bespoke scoop, you say?
Not bespoke. Look, it's no fancy scoop. It's a working man's scoop.
Yeah, exactly. It's a blue-collar scoop.
Well, it's a green scoop.
It's down to earth. It's a down-to-earth
It's down-to-earth
Each scoop is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and whole food source ingredients of high quality that give you major benefits like gut and mood support, boosted energy, healthier-looking skin, hair, and nails.
Yes.
It's delivered every month. Easy to make it a daily habit. You can get some travel packs if you're going to be on the road.
Yeah.
Just mix it in with ice cold water and drink it first thing every morning. That's it.
Yeah. If you're like me, taking a look in the mirror, thinking, when did I become the crypt keeper and why am I tired all the time?
Yes.
Why is my body breaking down? Maybe try taking that little green scoop.
You drink it.
And putting some AG1 into a nice tall glass of water.
Now, if you want to take ownership of your health, try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/blankcheck. That's drinkag1.com/blankcheck. Check it out.
Can we talk about some of the other actors in the movie?
Yes.
Who we have not yet mentioned?
Who have we not mentioned?
David Krumholtz.
Oh, Crumb, man.
Sort
Crummy
of
Crumb.
the closest thing the movie has to like a
Oh,
conscience
David,
character.
you should eat something here.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ben, for giving us
a
all
sort
oranges.
of walking bubby.
Yeah, Ben had a list of bits he thought of doing for this episode and wisely said we shouldn't do. One was wearing goggles the whole episode.
Like Benny Safdie.
One was every 30 minutes taking out a handkerchief and giving you an orange slice, David. That was a bit he
That
thought.
actually sounds like something that should happen on every
He
episode.
thought
That
about
sounds
prepping.
nice.
David, you should eat something.
Yeah, eat something, David.
Yeah.
The whole thing about he plays Isidore Rabi.
Yeah.
That guy fucking invented the microwave. That's the funniest thing about like a lot of these. You like click on them, you're like, so who was this guy? He's
Yeah.
like, invented the fucking microwave. You like the microwave?
Yeah,
That's that
that
dude.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of the
And
real,
the MRI. He invented the MRI.
the real people
I hate the MRI.
in this
Well,
movie.
also, but it means he invented the best set piece in Insidious 5. Carry on. Go ahead.
Oh, Jesus.
Set inside an MRI.
Okay,
really cool
go
set
on,
piece.
Marie.
Cool. To prepare for Oppenheimer, I watched The Day After Trinity,
Yes.
which is available on Criterion Channel. If you have not seen it, you should check it out. It's really interesting. They have interviews with Rabi, and they also have interviews with oh my God, what's his name? The guy Michael Angarano, Robert Serber.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because Angarano's doing a voice.
And you and I walking out the
Yeah.
first time were like, I guess he
I'm
just...
going to admit that Angarano is one of the few. I did not totally clock him in this movie. I'll watch for him next time.
Okay.
Well, he's the one who like talks with a lisp.
He like sounds like Daffy Duck.
Sure.
Yes.
Right.
But that's literally how the guy sounds.
Right, Marie, you were like, I guess he just came up with like a thing so that he'd stand out from the other
Yeah.
guys. And then you watched this movie and you were like, oh, no, Griffin, that voice is 100% accurate.
Yeah, it was wild.
All right, who else?
Who else? Oh, who do we else do we need? We haven't really talked about
we haven't
Florence
talked
Pugh.
about lots of people.
Yeah, this movie has a large cast.
Oh, so I saw Oppenheimer before my fiance David did, and he's a big Oppenheimer guy. He too, like David Sims, has read American Prometheus and has a framed photo of J. Robert Oppenheimer in his office,
I
which
do not
is
have a framed photo of J. Robert.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
He sees him as a tragic hero, but it was so hard for me to keep from him
Sure.
for 5 days that I Am Become Death, Destroyer of Worlds,
Is read to boobs?
is read to boobs, is read to Florence Pugh as she is mounting him
Sure.
and putting his penis inside of her.
Well,
That is a crazy
it's a great way to
choice.
read Sanskrit.
I mean, I guess.
Well, but like
It's kind of hot.
this guy's attitude towards sex does seem so wrapped up in like death and
Yes.
gloom.
Yes.
Like, and like, especially in the book, you really get the sense of this guy of like, I mean, it's why you can picture Nolan picking this book up, and it's like Oppenheimer, reedy, blue, piercing eyes,
Yeah.
strange, aloof energy,
Yeah.
kind of weird,
Equally
very
hot and terrifying.
and
Right.
Nolan just going like, oh, what's Killian's number? Like, like this guy just screams Killian
Scrolling
Murphy.
through his flip phone,
Yeah.
one button click at a time until he gets down to the
We haven't really
Cs.
talked about Killian yet.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it.
But like I think like as much as this guy was a randy boy who was sleeping with lots of people and often sleeping with married women
Yeah.
of his friends' wives and
Right.
things like that, like it feels like there's this kind of like dark compulsion to it. And Jean Tatlock, who really could have a whole goddamn movie written about herself because she's so fascinating, is like the most sort of destructive, and intense figure in his romantic life.
Yes.
And her death was so powerful for him and mysterious in its own right.
So speaking of her death,
Yes. So Florence Pugh plays this character in the film. She's really in like 4 scenes.
Yeah.
I would say she gets short shrift in a way, but like the film is also so packed.
a lot.
I don't
yeah.
really know how it's supposed
think
to
she
balance
makes-
everything.
she makes an
a very big
impression.
impression.
Yes.
So I only really caught this the second time
Yes.
I saw it. Humble brag.
The rubber glove.
The rubber gloves.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. It's, to me, very reminiscent. So this film is very reminiscent of Memento to me in many ways.
Yeah.
But the flashbacks in Memento, the frenzied kind of violence where you don't
Right.
really know what's going on, very similar to her death, which he didn't witness and was
Right.
reported as suicide. But
Yeah.
then you see a flash of a glove at one point because maybe she was murdered by the government. You don't know.
Yeah.
She was a
also-
communist with ties to Oppenheimer, who is like, seen as like a very unstable figure.
I also think this movie is very similar to Memento. thematically in it being about a guy who doesn't really know who he is and doesn't really have a comfortable grasp on reality.
I also when Memento came out and Christopher Nolan was just a cute nobody who'd made a little movie at Sundance.
And cute was the main word everyone
He's
threw
fucking
at him.
cute.
I think he's still cute.
He's still cute, but
He looks good.
You watch those interviews with him around Memento time, and you're like, "This is a dashing young man,"
Sure.
and he talks about like how he presents the film, and the color segments in Memento are subjective.
Yep.
They're from the perspective of Leonard,
Yes.
and you're entirely inside his head, which is what the color segments of Oppenheimer are. You're with Oppenheimer. Yes.
Right.
Yes. You're perceiving it as
yes.
Oppenheimer perceives it.
Yes.
And then the black and white in Memento is objective.
Right.
And there's a narrator, it's more like sort of traditional filmy noir.
It's the Tobolowsky, Thomas Lennon stuff.
No. Well, there's that, but no. There's two, how Memento flows, where it bounces between, and in the black and white segments, it's like Leonard being like in voiceover, like you wake up in a room, you don't know who you are. Here are the rules of how I work, right? Mm-hmm. And in the color sequences, you're in Leonard's head.
Yeah.
Oppenheimer has the same gimmick. The black and white stuff, like with Strauss, that's not from Strauss's perspective. Like we're much more in like a classic documentary type perspective.
I think it is from Strauss's perspective.
No, because like Strauss is an unknowable figure at first, and you're watching the movie and you're like, this guy is sort of like, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know who like rolled him on the bus.
No, but that's my take is, you think you're watching objective and then you find out, in fact, it is subjective. It's just a different person's subjective.
No. By subjective, I mean, you're not in Strauss's head. You're watching someone watch Strauss. You're watching people investigate Strauss, and we're understanding him.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he has also, I'm just repeating Nolan's line.
I know. I just felt like the way he was framing it was maybe to try to obscure the sort of narrative twist of the film.
What, that Strauss was a bad dude?
That you're seeing a very weighted account of events based on this guy trying to manipulate history to his advantage.
Sure, but like the sort of this like whatever. We don't need to like nitpick about this, but like the Strauss stuff is peppered into the film pretty early, right? We're cutting to it.
He's basically
pretty much right away.
He sets up like 4 different narratives from the beginning, which is the Strauss hearing, the Oppenheimer hearing, the sort of
and Oppenheimer's like life, like more straightforward life.
What's the fourth? Is it just?
Yeah,
I guess you're sort of
connection to Einstein. I think that's a really important element too.
I'd say for the first chunk of it, especially, you're sort of engaging with Oppenheimer in a couple different time periods at once.
Yeah, you're cutting between pre-war and post-war.
Right, but there's basically 3 main things.
But then there's these black and white things, which is like Strauss, Alden Ehrenreich, who's the other guy? Scott Grimes in there, maybe?
Is that who it is?
I don't think Scott
other
Grimes.
guy? No,
Scott Grimes is in this film. I just don't know who he played. There's another guy in there.
Yes.
Where they're like prepping for Strauss's Secretary of Commerce hearing.
Yes, I think you're right. I think it is.
And he's getting a little anxious of like, are they going to bring up this Oppenheimer stuff? And so and they're sort of talking through like what happened there, right? And so the first part of these segments are more expositional. It's more Strauss just kind of being like, well, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just
this is kind of off the record, him just explaining what we think in good faith his interpretation of the events were.
And as it goes on, now this is the thing that's not in the book. This is not an American Prometheus at all. Like the American Prometheus mentions, yes, Strauss did eventually. He talks about Strauss a lot. Yeah. And that he eventually got shot down, by the Senate later as revenge, basically, for him fucking over Oppenheimer. But this is all imagined. The stuff that's in the Senate hearing is real, but this behind the scenes stuff is sort of like trying to give you an idea of Strauss, I think. Like we said, this personality.
And the framing of him as Oppenheimer's sort of shadow is not a thing that the book is really foregrounding.
The book is certainly, Oppenheimer really pissed that guy off.
Yeah.
Because Oppenheimer was this arrogant, super charming in a way, science celebrity.
Charismatic. He was certainly compelling.
And Strauss was this dilettante. He's not a scientist, but he was in charge of the Atomic Energy Commission. And Oppenheimer would kind of like playfully like slap him down in private and in public.
Right.
And it like builds this resentment, but it's on one side. Oppenheimer's just like, I don't, what? Where Strauss is like, that fucking guy won't stop needling me, won't stop thinking he's smarter than me.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's such a great performance by Downey when he finally like unravels at the end in this like seething monologue.
It was, I was telling Griffin, it was fun seeing Oppenheimer so soon after rewatching Old Boy.
Sure.
Because like the reveal of the like revenge plot that is all in one guy's head that the other guy doesn't.
The other
really.
guy's like, huh?
I don't even think about you.
Yeah.
Right. And the cleverness of that Einstein, where he's like, what do you fucking tell Einstein? He's like,
Poison him against me.
they don't care about you.
Ehrenreich
You're
nails
like a
that
suit
moment
to them.
so
He does.
hard.
Great job by Alden.
Right. Have you ever considered that maybe they were talking about something more important that day?
And they were literally talking about the fact that the atomic bomb might have blew up the world.
Right.
Which is
what's so, I mean, I was about to say funny, but what I think is so interesting is you see that event 3 times, right? You basically perceive from a distance, from Strauss's distance, Oppenheimer and Einstein having this very quick conversation that Einstein walks away from looking completely despondent.
Right. Einstein looks like a world away.
Right.
Yes.
And Strauss strews on this as Oppenheimer said something to turn Einstein against me because when I walked over and he was walking away, he refused to acknowledge me.
He gave me the
He
cold
must have been
shoulder.
shit talking me,
He
right?
wiped my ass.
And my read on it was like, I bet you're going to find out that Oppenheimer said something that was dismissive to Einstein.
Sure, he pissed off Einstein.
That he
as
was
well.
disrespectful to Einstein on a personal level.
He
And
dunks
instead-
on him a couple of times.
He does, right. So I was like, that's what you're going to find out is he says something really cutting to Einstein. Instead, no, he says the most cutting thing imaginable.
About himself and the world.
We've maybe
yes.
fucked up the world and humanity beyond
And
repair.
also, Einstein
Might
says
have.
something completely devastating
I think
to
we
him.
have. He says it as a definite statement. Yes.
That all of the, you can be as much of a masochist as you want and people will forgive you and they'll give you a plaque, but it won't be for
right.
it won't be for you, it'll be for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's at
And
the
that
end. That's
is-
so good.
And
devastating.
also, it's like he is equally uncomfortable with both outcomes.
Yeah.
He hates being vilified and he hates being honored, right?
Right.
This guy is ruined. He is ruined, understandably, because he did a fucking thing
right.
that
I mean,
you don't
he
move on
cannot
from.
unshoulder himself.
No.
Or yeah.
Nor should he. But it's like he's in both scenarios. He looks as unhappy when he's in the fucking White House being handed that giant trophy and medal around his
Johnson
neck.
gave him the Fermi Prize. Yeah.
Right. He looks miserable then, as he does.
well,
I mean, it's what might be the big scene in the movie is his speech he gives after. Right.
It's such a power. After the test.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of big scenes in this movie, but the first 2 hours are this race,
Yes.
right? Where the movie never lets up.
And it's almost like a heist movie of like, can they pull this
Let's
off?
get
We
more
have to
guys.
put the
Let's get
team
the-
together.
Matt
and-
Damon on the train.
And I think it's crucial that the movie's moving so fast because you need the sense of like no one is slowing down to think about what they're doing.
Bill
Right.
Garr,
Then,
of
of
course,
course,
basically put it as like the movie is basically like a 3-hour montage, right? And then like once every 40 minutes, it grinds to a halt in a way that gives you whiplash, and then it starts up again and builds up steam the same way.
And then there's the test itself, which we can talk about more, but like is a very arresting sequence.
Sure.
And then right after the test, like you say, he gives this speech, which is a real speech he gave to the assembled people of Los Alamos who are cheering after they
Even the
after
stuff
nuked
about like
Hiroshima.
if only we'd done
Used
it to
on
the Germans.
and everyone's cheering, but
I
then
feel
like
the Japanese didn't like it.
But the sound cuts out, so all you can hear basically are you don't hear their cheering.
Yeah.
You hear their chairs squeaking. You hear when they stand up.
I was losing my mind during the sequence. I was truly, it really, had a big effect.
And when you cut to the Oppenheimer close-ups, the world is like vibrating around him, like the early scenes where he kind of can't process what he's able to see on a scientific level, right? And it's this thing of like, when he's trying to be solemn, he feels uncomfortable. When he's trying to like affect this sort of like we did it rah kind of like sensationalism in the speech, he feels uncomfortable. He's scanning over the crowd. He feels equally haunted by the people who are crying, the people who are laughing. There are teenagers basically under the bleachers making out as if it was like after a fucking high school football game.
We see a woman's skin peeling
that's
off.
in his face,
Right.
in his head.
He's imagining for the first time what it must have felt like on the ground. But like what he's literally seeing is cheering, screaming, laughing, crying, making out, vomiting, and all of it is equally disturbing to him.
The
The stomping of the feet.
stomping and
Right.
the noise of that.
Basically, all you're hearing are their feet, right? You hear when they stand up, you hear when they stomp, you hear when they like shift around in their chairs, and that's the only sound effect he's hearing.
Am I wrong that we also kind of hear sounds of war and people
Yeah,
screaming?
you're
It's
hearing
like
what
such
he-
an onslaught.
Because obviously we don't see the bombing of Hiroshima or Nagasaki in this film. We don't see, footage because he wouldn't have seen footage. He hears about it on the radio.
Right.
There's one sequence, which is how he would have heard about it.
Yeah.
There's one sequence where there's like a slideshow.
I think it's Angurano's
so
character.
The Angurano's
Right, yeah.
character goes to Nagasaki
Right.
and Hiroshima and
Takes pictures.
takes pictures,
Yes.
talks to the victims of the bomb,
But
and brings back
As
evidence
like an
of what the bomb
anthropological
did.
study,
Right.
like almost dispassionately.
But
Yeah.
like you can see that Oppenheimer can't even look at it.
Yeah.
Like, he's struggling to even look at the
because
slides.
those photos are really
Yeah, they're
disturbing.
insane. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's a
So
completely
awful.
insane thing that
Right.
we did.
And, people argue, is this movie insensitive by not actually showing us these things, by putting it so much in the headspace of this
Subjective,
one
right.
man? Right. To not actually grapple with how terrifying the reality of this imagery was doesn't really make the full weight of the consequence land in people's minds. I think these are photos that exist out there, have existed for many, many decades. These are stories that have been covered in many different mediums.
The consequences felt in this film.
Yes.
But I think beyond that,
Him not engaging with it is important.
I
Like-
agree.
Like
I
that's,
agree.
That's a point the movie is
I
making.
think that's
Right.
huge. But also, Marie, you asked me immediately afterwards, you said, what do you think about that decision to not show it, right?
Right.
And I said, I think you're really in a double-edged sword situation if you're Nolan, right? Aside from the fact that just narratively for the story he's telling, yes, that guy doesn't even want to look at it because he can imagine it, right? So he doesn't want to look into the eye of what he created.
There's also like the Trinity test is this moment of, it's terrifying, but it's also a moment of real spectacle.
Yes.
It's exciting.
Yes.
You're tense and nervous and it's an incredible moment.
Yeah.
It would be like spectacle. Again,
Yeah.
to depict and I think it would be like kind of queasy spectacle.
That was
Like,
my
it would be,
entire take to Marie, is I'm like, he's got two choices. One is to replicate it in some way, which then gets kind of gross, where it's
Yeah,
like you
it's
are
nasty,
kind of giving people eye candy because you're like, wow, look at the makeup, look at the effects, even if
Right.
it's
Right.
to the ends of trying to
horror.
shock
Yeah,
and
yeah,
horrify.
right.
It still becomes movie magic, right? Or you do what some films do, which is like you reuse real footage or real imagery, which feels very exploitative to me.
Well, and again, I just feel like he's like, we're with this guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this guy wouldn't have seen anything on TV because
Yeah.
that just wasn't a thing in 1945.
I just think there's no way to show it on screen that isn't actually insensitive to the actual victims.
Well, the one girl that we see Oppenheimer imagine,
right. Her
is,
sort of
is that
skin flaking.
Nolan's
That's
daughter?
Nolan's daughter.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Right.
Well, look, another comparison to Park Chan-wook,
Yeah.
our current guy.
I made
where
this
he's
for my
like,
daughter.
I made this movie for my daughter. And I'm like, you made this movie for your daughter? You sick asshole.
Yeah, I mean,
Beautiful, crazy person.
No, but I think there's something to like Nolan is filming the
Yes.
destruction of the person who means as much to him as anyone in his life.
100%.
Yes.
Like the emotional consequence of it.
Right?
is-
The movie
is-
doesn't give you that
is so
context, but there's some
massive for
feeling that
him.
comes across in like
Right.
a yes.
God
On a
bless him.
cellular level. I mean, Barbie does a similar thing to very opposite effect, where at the end of that movie, without spoiling things for people, there's a montage of like home video footage. And Greta Gerwig talked about that's all home video footage from people who worked on the movie, like the
It's
crew and the
lovely
cast.
stuff. Yeah.
Totally. And she said, I think there are things you can put in a film that even if they're not expressed overtly, you can feel it in the sort of DNA that this is personal, right? And this comes from someplace honest and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing the same thing, which is like, I'm going to film this differently if it's my own daughter. Because this is as
I think
upsetting
it's a
to
good
me
call.
as it could be to anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
But that's
but
right.
then again, maybe he actually thinks Oppenheimer is good and that the bombs were good.
He
No, I'm
liked the
joking.
bomb. No, and you have basically from that scene on the speech this recurring visual motif of like the blinding light
Right, like
on
everything
Oppenheimer.
going white.
Yes.
Because the moment of the test where there's the flash and no noise,
Yeah.
and you hear the noise later, which is how it would have been,
Yeah.
is so like spellbinding as well.
This is a very analog movie. Nolan, I think abhors having any digital process on his films.
he thinks
right?
it looks fake.
Right.
Yeah.
And he has had films before that have a hybrid. Even when he shoots on film, if you're incorporating digital effects, then at some point you have to put it in a digital editing system. You have to color correct digitally, whatever. This was a movie he never wanted going onto computers, right? Just everything done photochemically.
I mean, he even talks about he's like anti-wigs. He like wants as little fakery as possible,
Yes.
I think. You're right, yeah.
But there are certain effects in this movie that I think are so impactful. And they're very simple. He's not like trying to overthink them, right? But just like in the way of just like, you know what? Just flashing a really bright light on Cillian Murphy's face is going to speak volumes. And I think the thing they do at several moments in the movie where he basically cuts himself into imagining him in the scene that someone else is describing to him. When David Dastmalchian comes up to him and talks about being in a fighter, fighter pilot.
In a plane and watching a V-2 rocket go over.
Right.
That moment is so shocking, though, when he's suddenly sitting in the cockpit with him.
Right.
All those little, like when Florence Pugh is sitting on him in the hearing.
A thing that people have dinged as being goofy.
What?
I think that's like a devastating moment.
That is an incredible moment. And it's also just like, for Nolan to like do that is so unusual. Like he doesn't break form like that. Really.
No.
Like, and for him to suddenly start playing with like that kind of like fantasy and reality is very.
But I also think like on a very simple level, he's getting at something, which is like when someone describes having sex with someone to you or even acknowledges that it happened, your brain flashes to imagining the visual for a second. Like when does that not happen, right? So even in this very staid, boring conference room where Emily Blunt is going to be so deeply embarrassed to hear him acknowledge out loud, yes, we did have intimate relations. It's not like he's describing physical acts. It's her greatest fear is they're now all thinking about it. They all know
That's the thing he's trying to write. Yeah, you know, like
he says
this
to her,
guy has dragged this into this room and making me listen to it.
He says to her, I didn't say anything that you didn't already know. And she went like, all of them know now.
Yeah. Like
they're
I
all
didn't,
thinking,
it's different.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like they're all thinking about him having sex with this woman now. And she's looking at them thinking about him having sex with that woman.
And looking at her and thinking about how it affects her and how embarrassed she is.
And that's when Jason Clarke was like, okay, I get it. I will do your movie.
Right.
I'll do your cuck movie.
Right. But then said like, but when was I married to Florence Pugh's character? We're
Nolan
missing
was
that
just
one
like,
scene.
If it helps you to understand the movie better, fine, you were married to her as well.
I thought about a thing. Our friend Richard Lawson said in a conversation many drinks in on a very unrelated subject many months ago.
Trolls?
My trolls.
He said
they're
my
out of
trolls.
control. I never should have
He
brought
said
them
my
to
trolls
this world.
are out of control.
I feel like there's blood on my hands. He said that to Harry Truman once about his trolls.
We were talking about people who were perhaps characteristically similar to the Florence Pugh character in this film.
Sure, sort of like wild, interesting, but unstable, you know, right.
And he said, like, the captivating thing about people like that is they just tell you exactly who they are immediately. And even if who they are is terrifying and you know it's going to be harmful to you, there's something really hard to resist in that. And I think when Oppenheimer is this like constructed man.
So you were talking about Princess Poppy when you were talking about? Okay.
Absolutely. We were talking about Princess Poppy. Well, Branch is the one who's really hiding his true self.
That's
because
true.
If you've seen the Trolls trailer, which I'm calling the Troller.
Jesus Christ.
For Trolls band together, we find out that Branch, the most cynical and dour of all trolls, was in fact once a member of a boy band.
Wow.
The actual adult point I was about to make
yes, Griffin.
was that Oppenheimer's this constructed man, right? He's sort of an act to a certain degree.
And he's made of Lego.
He's made of Lego. And he's like going through this world trying to make sense of other people who are putting on airs and this and that. And here's this woman who just cannot hide what she thinks and who she is at any moment.
He interiorizes everything.
Right.
He's all inside and she is, look at my boobs. I'm out here. I'm saying things and getting up from
to me, baby.
Getting up from bed to look at your bookshelf and neg you about it. You know, quick thing, while we're talking about women in this movie, there is one thing I just want to say. And
what's that?
I want to, it's not going to be me. It's going to be filmmaker Barbie voicing this opinion.
Okay.
I, Marie Bardi, will say that I believe Oppenheimer is a masterpiece, 5 stars. It's great. However, film director Barbie will say that he is not beating the can't write women allegations.
No, I think
Emily Blunt, the fucking the one complaint I have about
put
this
him
movie,
on trial, he'd be like, I'm guilty.
Right.
Yes, I mean,
We can't write women jail.
And when Clint makes his movie about Chris Nolan, that's
I mean, the every scene she's got a drink in her hand. And I guess she was an alcoholic in
when
real
you
life.
read the book, that's her vibe.
Who are you saying?
Kitty Oppenheimer.
Kitty Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's subtle.
I'm connecting
Super
that
subtle.
now.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, look.
Ben's big takeaway walking out of the theater, he went, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but they used music a couple times.
Yeah. And then he said, and did you guys notice she was always drinking?
Kitty
Those beer
was
goggles she had were crazy.
3 sheets to the wind all the time. She certainly did have kids, and then later go like, I don't know what to do with this fucking thing. Can someone else take care of it?
In the movie, it's played a little bit like Lucille Bluth. Though.
Yeah.
It's a little comical.
Yes.
Yeah, I think she was kind of a firecracker.
I
God
know,
bless
but
her.
that stuff is just
Her
so.
on the horse is powerful. You're like, I get it.
No,
you know?
and there are moments where right after Florence Pugh dies, and she's like, "Get yourself together. You're not."
When he's out in the out in the desert.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And her, showcase of grammar,
shutting down Jason Clarke.
yes, are both fantastic. But all of the little it's a little. Her performance is a little mannered. I don't know if it's a her performance thing or if it's the way the character's written or what. It rubbed against film director Barbie in a way that
I like that. I do feel like she's kind of doing a Barbara Stanwyck thing, and that she's sort of doing a performance of the way that women acted in movies.
She's a bit of a
era.
spiky 40s dame,
right?
I love Emily Blunt. I'm very pro Emily.
Let's put it bluntly, we love her.
Is she a mannered actress? I don't know. I guess not. I guess this is more.
I think she can fit
mannered. Right. Yeah. She's pretty versatile.
Yes.
It's like I haven't really seen a lot. Like it's like her last few years. It's like Jungle Cruise, Quiet Place Part 2.
Yeah.
Which like she barely gets to talk in that movie. What the fuck? Thank you,
David.
Silence falls.
Mary Poppins Returns is one of those things where I'm like, you've done your best here.
Yes.
I don't know. It's not a bad performance.
It's a bit of an Oppenheimer moment of, did this need to be done?
What have we done?
Right.
Like the last time I've truly loved her is fucking Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like ever since then, I've always just been like, I am pro Blunt always.
Right.
But often kind of like, well, I'd love to see you doing
all those performances you listed. I watched Jungle Cruise and I was like, damn, she's really fucking good.
She's good in it.
That movie, I'm just like, to what end?
Yeah.
I remember feeling the same way during Into the Woods, where I'm like, she kind of can do anything.
Yeah.
What a shame that it's in service of this film.
Yeah. Sicario, she's good in, but that movie.
Yeah.
Sicario, I think she's pretty phenomenal.
But
the movie then
treats her
But I
horribly.
think that's the point.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. But nonetheless, that is what's happening to Emily Blunt, the actor.
Right.
She's great in Quiet Place.
Yeah. But
and in Huntsman Winter's War, she fought the war. She was the ice queen.
I mean, I like her when she's tough and prickly, like she is in Edge of Tomorrow.
One of the greatest performances in the
Devil
history
Wears
of cinema.
Prada and Looper, and she's like, I like that mode, and I think she's trying to channel that in this movie. But for it just didn't. That's the only piece that felt not perfect.
I just kicked down my batarang. I was sitting on my desk. I'm an adult.
Swear to me.
I'm an adult.
Oppenheimer.
I'm a grown-up.
Why didn't Batman interrogate Oppenheimer?
He should have.
Swear to me.
It would have been over and done with in 45 minutes. No, the Nolan dead wife trope, right? Nolan,
this wife is alive.
Yeah, absolutely. This has a dead mistress. It's a very different story.
Exactly.
I have always, Christopher Nolan has always struck me as someone who in his movies expresses things that he maybe could never express with his own words, right? Not that the man is not in touch with his own feelings or lacks interiority,
sure,
but it does feel like movies are very therapeutic for him, and you're finding out a lot of what he finds interesting and what scares him and all of that. It makes a lot of sense that he's been with the same woman for the majority of his life. He has many children with her. She is his producing partner in all films. And he seems most terrified in the world of the idea of his wife dying. That is like the scariest thing he could possibly imagine.
So you're saying that all his dead wives are actually just a really sweet reflection on his own living wife?
To a certain degree.
That is a very interesting reading of that.
I don't think that makes up for the fact that he greatly underserves his female characters because he makes them serve as plot functions for his greatest fear rather than letting them exist as people.
Right.
And I do think, like,
who's the best Nolan lady?
I was just thinking
Catwoman?
this. I think Catwoman is good. I think Murph in Interstellar.
Love her.
Because she is not a wife,
Queen.
she is a daughter.
She's a queen. No, she rules. She's the best.
But I also think like Carrie-Anne Moss in Memento is better than most of the ones.
That's a really clever femme fatale character.
Yeah.
It's his best of the femme fatales.
Well, I just whatever. Let's not talk about his dead wives too much.
What were you gonna say?
I like the idea of Marion Cotillard in Inception so much, even though she is the prototypical dead wife, because she is literally dead for the whole movie.
I'd bump on it less if she was the only example of that in his filmography.
Because the idea of like, what if something happened to you that haunted you, and then you were a person who lived inside your own mind, she would always be there being like, remember me, bitch?
The concept of that character, I think, is really cool. I'm about to ask a very controversial question.
Okay.
Has she given a good performance in English?
Marion Cotillard?
I think several, yes.
Like
personally.
what?
Well, I think she's amazing in Public Enemies. Maybe you don't agree, but I love that performance.
I don't remember her performance in Public Enemies.
I fucking love it. And I like
the
her
question.
in Allied a lot.
Allied is my favorite American, or my favorite English language Cotillard, but her best performances are in French.
Yes.
No question.
Obviously.
Right.
Yes.
Rust and Bone in my mind is her.
Rust and Bone is
best.
phenomenal.
2 Days, 1 Night. She's amazing.
Yeah.
I think she's really good in The Immigrant. That's an English language
Assassin's Creed. What are we talking about? Assassin's
sorry,
Creed.
you're right.
The Apple. No, that language is not written. That was not written in English. That was written in fucking
Creedies.
wingdings. What?
How dare you?
That was a good joke.
Immigrant's English language.
Yeah, Immigrant. She's
Okay.
really good. She's
Yeah.
awesome movies.
I think
she plays foreign characters in English movies well.
Right. I mean,
She came in and she's like, "Hey guys, I'm from New York City."
I'm still waiting for her to play Adam Sandler's wife in a movie.
Yeah,
That's
Jesus
the one I'm
Christ.
waiting
Baby,
for.
why are you so sad? What did David Spade say to you?
Call me a loser.
I rewatched Inception
Come
over
to
the
bed.
weekend.
Don't
and-
play video games.
I don't know. I don't want to have sex with you, man.
Come on, our politics are probably kind of similar. Horseshoe theory.
I just put these basketball shorts on. I don't want to take them off.
Jet fuel cannot melt steel beams.
You're so funny, Marion.
You love the
Cotillard.
New York Jets. I love to talk about jet fuel.
Yeah, what an odd couple we are.
Sorry.
Great. Serious episode. No bits. Go on, Marie.
No, I was just I
What
rewatched.
have we done? I'm Oppenheimer.
Glass is shaking.
I just rewatched Inception this weekend,
Great
a
movie.
movie that I had only seen once in theaters, and
That's crazy.
I mean,
Forky did recently. She was like, "What's that movie I hate that you love?" And I was like, "It could be a lot of movies." She's like, "The one where like Leonardo DiCaprio is in dreams," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, I do love that movie,
Yeah.
and I suppose you do hate it."
I
What'd you think of
remember
Inception?
liking it at the time.
Yeah,
Because that was, part of the time in my life where I was a student at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts.
David's pointing.
pointing
to
at Barbie.
Film
yeah,
school.
Barbie.
Film school Barbie.
Film school
Film School
Barbie.
Barbie.
She's saddled with debts.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she can't get under.
Film school Barbie went to Chapman.
Oh,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Sorry,
anyways,
you were film school.
and I went with a group of like 20 people. There were no assigned seats at the Lincoln Square
it was the
IMAX.
Wild West, man.
So
Bedlam.
you had to go like
2010.
5 hours
Riding
in
your horses
advance.
in. Yeah.
People brought board games.
I do remember that, where
Yeah.
you just are like, well,
Yeah.
I'll show up 3 hours early, I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah.
and
The
it
line.
was for the midnight screening on
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Thursday night.
We
and
used to be in
that
the
was,
We used to be a
I
proper
mean,
country.
insane.
Things were clearly better
Yeah.
then.
So I remember my experience of seeing Inception as like a fun event.
Mhm.
I remembered the hallway fight.
Yeah.
And the totem.
Yeah.
Token is a totem.
Only
And
I know the exact weight, size of.
That's why we were
Loaded
talking
die.
Inception, me and my wife, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt was on Sesame Street. Carry on, continue.
uh,
She was like, what happened to this guy? And
Only
was,
I know the exact weight of this cookie.
Give me that. Go on.
Well, just real quick, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I had like a really weird experience recently where I was watching The Wind Rises, but I was watching the dub version.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I didn't know it was him.
It's him.
And I was like, this guy's got a sexy voice. Who is this? And I looked it up and I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess Joseph Gordon-Levitt does have a sexy
Got a
voice.
very,
Only I know the exact weight of this murder
of
plane.
this voice. What about Inception?
I did not like it.
What? The fuck is the matter with you? Out!
I'm sorry.
David,
There's that R!
David.
Film School Barbie can take over.
David.
I bet she liked Inception. Why didn't you like it?
I just got bored. It was like a lot of exposition.
Yes.
Yes.
It rules. It's like reading the most exciting instruction manual of all time. It's the best. But the best thing about Inception is it's like the first act is Leonardo DiCaprio being like, here's the instruction manual. And then, Elliot Page reads it. And he's like, I get it. And then he keeps being like, I have more pages from the instruction manual, actually. And they all contradict the other parts of
Right.
it. Like, it's so good.
I think the action in the last third is really fun.
Yeah. The snow.
But the middle.
Cillian Murphy, who we should talk about in this movie, crying.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Pete
dead dad
Postlethwaite's
stuff.
Dead Beth.
Yeah,
Dead Beth. I need to go home and lie down. Deathbed.
Yeah, I mean, no, I wouldn't say it's like a total stinker. None of Nolan's movies are stinkers, but
Some people like that.
I was looking at my phone a lot.
What about the Inception episode we did where we had a podcast within a podcast?
That was a classic
That was a
episode
classic.
of Blank
That
Check.
sounds great.
Well,
I think dreams are cool. I would like to,
what about
go
the
through
meme
them.
of Leo squinting? You wouldn't have that without Inception.
You wouldn't have that without Inception.
I'm just gonna, put on my little nerd hat and say I prefer Paprika.
That's fair.
Will always find the comparison people make between those two masterpieces a little baffling.
Well,
I will always find the idea that Nolan ripped off Paprika to be very strange, given as someone who loves Paprika and has seen it so many times. They're not that similar, apart from the very basic concept of going inside people's dreams. But
David, right now, are
yell at
you
me if you
hearing
wish.
like people like
Yes,
going
I
like
am.
this? And
I
like,
know
you're hearing
that's going to make people crazy
explosions and-
because people don't agree with that point.
Yeah.
And I've never quite, as someone who's watched Paprika many times, I've never quite understood. But whatever.
Okay.
Our friend Siddhant, a past and future guest, has been wrote some very good pieces in the lead up to Oppenheimer, but also has been reposting all his pieces on Nolan over the years. Who's a filmmaker he's followed closely and written about a lot. And he threw out a term in one of the pieces, I forget, about just like. It's I think it could have been perceived as a sideswipe, but I don't think it was. He was almost saying like it is secretly one of the things that makes him really interesting. He mentioned his distinct lack of imagination. Right? There is this thing where Nolan is a guy who wants to make sense of things. He's not going on flights of fancy. He's trying to like solve them in this way that's very similar to all the scientists in this movie who are sitting down and just trying to crack the code. It's the reason why, like, The Dark Knight being a movie that kind of broke Hollywood for a while, of like, how does everyone replicate this? And the thing that we forget now, because we're thankfully kind of out of it, was like the 7 or 8 years of blockbusters being really fucking dour and self-serious and gritty and realistic, where they were all trying to copy the Nolan thing, but it was an affectation, right? It was like a posture versus Nolan being like, I need to create a Batman that makes sense to me. Like, he fundamentally rejected a Batman that felt fanciful, not as some sort of like hook, but as like
everything needs to have some practical sense.
Right. That's just how he thinks through things. It's like he's working on a proof, right? And I think this movie is him similarly just trying to like get to how do I come up with answers for questions that are unanswerable?
Right.
But that are beyond that, like movies that are about a movie that is about circumstances in which people are asked questions where the effect of how they answer at that moment is so great, where you really have to think about the weight of how you respond. I think Inception, the obvious like kind of slam on it is like, for a movie about dreams, it should be a lot fucking wilder.
That's often been the slam. And
Yeah.
I've been like, well, bitch, these are Christopher Nolan's dreams.
Exactly.
And he dreams like an architect.
Exactly. And like this guy cannot put a single thing on screen that is not a reflection of his worldview, which is, for better or worse, what we find interesting about directors.
I also find the imagery in Inception satisfyingly surreal
I
in
do
many
too.
ways.
I do
But
too. Thank you.
you know what? Drag me all over town.
Ben's raising his hand.
Okay, let's
Wrap
talk
up the
about
episode.
Killian.
Yes.
Yes.
We tabled that, and it's
So,
sort of an important aspect.
Obviously, he's
A
worked
little
with
bit.
Mr. Nolan many times.
This
Yep.
is the fifth,
This is sixth.
sixth.
Sixth
Three
time
Batman,
he's done 3 Batman. and
Inception, Dunkirk. This
correct.
okay.
He's wonderful in all those films.
Agreed.
He's great in the Batman movies. Obviously, his part in Dunkirk is so powerful.
He
Yeah.
is pretty astonishing in that.
And
film.
honestly, he's kind of the emotional fulcrum of Inception
He
too.
is.
Like, in this stealth way that you don't even realize. He's got the best eyes in the biz.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked plenty about him in our Boyle series
It's
recently.
a big year of Killian for us.
Yes.
Because we talked about 28 Days Later and Sunshine, which are also,
I think Sunshine's going to get an Oppenheimer bump.
I think so.
I do too.
I mean, as long as it's like available for people to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they make that movie legal again.
Yeah.
He's joked about, like, I guess I read physicist because I keep playing
Right.
physicists.
Yeah.
It's a tough
He's
performance.
good at staring into blindingly bright lights.
Like
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr., who's tremendous in this movie. And obviously, there's just also the incredible excitement of watching him
He's
fucking
back.
uncork it.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
literally
Right.
going like, hey, I had this bottle of champagne in my fridge. It's been here for like 20 years.
He's been serving you wine coolers for the last 10 years, and they taste good and they get you drunk.
And like, so, and he has like slam dunk kind of thunderous moments, like where you're like,
Yes.
wow, this is going to resonate for the whole year.
Yeah.
Killian's not getting those moments because that's,
It is-
the character he's playing,
Right.
the arc he's serving.
Downey Jr. keeps on. I think the bigger
Downey Jr.
stars
keeps like
Yeah.
dumping roses at this guy's
Right.
feet,
But
in
also,
these
the bigger
interviews.
stars in this movie on their press tours that all happened right before the strike.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were in solo, sometimes they were paired up with Killian, and regardless of whether he was there or not next to them, they basically all keep on using the fact that they're the bigger name to say, like, by the way, this guy gives maybe the performance of a generation, right? Like, they're just like, it's insane. Watching him work was insane. Watching the final product was insane. And I was like, are they in danger of overhyping this thing? When you watch it, you understand what they're reacting to, which is this guy just has to fucking maintain this hum for like 3 hours of movie. And 3 hours of movie that whip around so wildly in time and place that he's doing so many like tiny scene fragments, right? Where it's 10 seconds of him at a blackboard in a time that they'll never return to,
Yeah.
30 seconds of him saying 2 sentences to one person with, ripple effects that will, like a puddle.
And they keep
reverberate.
having this imagery, obviously,
Right.
of the ripples in those puddle. And
He gets big scenes, but
Yeah.
the guy never has catharsis. The guy never has the
the thing.
blow up. Right. He's just got to hold this thing for like 3 hours where you're just like, the concentration of this performance is astonishing to me. The restraint of it.
Right.
Yeah.
The catharsis you're getting is like Strauss melting down at the end of the film.
Totally.
Is Kitty, demolishing the King of Cucks, and then later, refusing to shake Teller's hand,
Yes.
Benny Safdie's hand.
Right.
Those moments are powerful,
Every moment.
but they're not Oppenheimer's
right.
moments. Right.
I mean, Florence Pugh has 4 scenes. Each of them is incredibly emotional.
Right. She's giving this big, but
Damon
like,
won't stop yelling.
God bless him. I wish he'd yell at me in bed,
But
in our
he's just
marriage
like,
bed.
Cillian Murphy just has to do like 3 hours of this and have you believe, which I think he does in every single frame of this movie, the shit going on in this guy's mind is impossible to comprehend.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think he also communicates enthusiasm well. Like,
Yes.
if he was my science teacher, I'd probably enjoy myself.
And I think like the way he's described in the book and the movie's is like he was this really good, because there's this moment where Damon's like, why don't you have a Nobel Prize? Like,
Right.
I want you to be in charge of this, but like you're not even like the leading physicist
Yeah.
in this field. And he apparently was just really good at like summarizing people's arguments, pushing the thing
The
forward,
great salesman of science is
carrying
what they
the
say.
ball.
Yeah.
Like and you whenever he seems the most alive in those scenes of lots of people.
That thing where he's
batting
got
stuff
one
around.
pupil and he's like, don't worry, when they find out what we're doing in here.
Right,
And
they'll
you
all show
see
up.
this sort of time lapse
Yeah.
of, the room filling up and him becoming a fucking rock star.
Yeah, I'd fuck him.
Yeah.
I'd fuck everyone in this movie.
It's
Yes,
maybe
yes.
my,
Just going
my,
down the
my
cast list.
single favorite like sort of line reading he has in the film is when Damon's interviewing him and he goes, you want to know the best quote I got about you? It's Oppenheimer couldn't even run a hamburger stand. And he laughs and he goes, I couldn't.
Yeah, right. That's not my field.
Right. He doesn't push back on it at all.
Right.
And then he just gets up and explains to him what he understands better than anyone else in the world.
Man, they're back and forth, those two.
They
Yeah.
have
They have
great
a bunch of
chemistry.
scenes that are so like. I mean, the standout is when right before the test.
Yeah.
Where they're like,
Right,
if
where they're
this
talking about
doesn't
like
go,
what if it blows up the world?
if this doesn't
Yeah.
happen though, our careers are ruined.
Right. Right.
Well,
'Cause
also
they-
maybe the
world
is,
would blow up.
but
the
but
world
there,
would
but,
blow up.
which is
Slightly
obviously
higher
that's
stakes.
the
Yeah.
theory thing where he's
Right.
like, what can I give you? It's fucking theory. Like
Yeah.
you never know. But there is also the marbles being put in the jar of like we only have so much plutonium.
Yes.
Every time if this doesn't work, we just blew a lot of our plutonium. We
Yeah.
don't have more.
There's also that scene where he invites Damon over for steamed clams, and then he accidentally overcooks them, and so he has to sneak out the window to Krusty Burger and buy hamburgers, and then
hams.
pretend that they're steamed
He's doing The
hams.
Simpsons.
Yeah.
It's an upstate New York thing. David, there's
Yeah.
a thing I like to say.
Okay.
I say it all the time.
What's that?
It's kind of my
Your
my
motto.
motto.
Yeah. The rule you live your life by.
I say using the internet without ExpressVPN is like not paying attention to the safety demonstration on a flight.
Okay. Can you elaborate?
I don't mean it metaphorically.
Okay. You just mean that literally.
Right. Most of the time, you'd probably be fine. You know, you've heard this 1,000 times. You know how it goes. But what if one day that weird yellow mass drops down from overhead? You have no idea what to do. Do I put it on me or the baby first?
You first.
This is my point. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Look, why does everyone need a VPN, Griffin? Because anytime you connect to an unencrypted network,
Yes.
maybe a cafe, Wi-Fi, or hotels, airports, any hacker on the same network can gain access to your personal data, your passwords, your bank details, anything like that. Doesn't
Black
take much
hats.
exactly. It doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack someone. Just some cheap hardware needed. A smart 12-year-old could do it.
Or Chris Hemsworth.
Black
yeah.
Hat Jr.
This is the thing.
Black Hat Babies.
Your data is invaluable.
Yeah.
Probably worth more than any of us are as people.
Right.
Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal info in the dark web. That's pretty disturbing.
Now, if you have ExpressVPN,
Yeah.
you have the secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet.
My favorite
Hackers
kind of tunnel.
can't steal your sensitive data.
Yeah.
It's super secure. It would take a supercomputer over 1 billion years
Yeah.
to get past ExpressVPN's
And
encryption.
Who has that time?
I don't know. It's easy to use. You fire up the app, you click one button to get protected. It works on all devices, phones, laptops, and tablets, and more, so you can stay secure on the go. So, ExpressVPN, I have it. It's very simple. You just click it on, and that's it.
And look, we're talking about it mostly right now.
Load it onto your
through
computer. That's it.
From the perspective of safety, but also obviously can help you if you want to stream some things from some foreign countries, which listeners of the show might find irrelevant.
Listen, you can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/check. That's expressvpn.com/check, and you can get an extra free 3 months free. expressvpn.com/check.
Quickly, just some other actors. I had like a Vince McMahon meme reaction.
Yeah, let's run down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Run down the list.
So the 3 actors I did not know were in this movie.
Sure.
Oh, no, sorry. 4.
Okay.
Or let's say I knew they were in the movie. I did not know who they were playing.
Sure. And also, so many people were in the cast of this that some people you're like, maybe I knew that at one point and forgot.
Yeah.
Wait, maybe it is 3. Oh, yeah, no, it's 4. Okay, number 1. Kenneth Branagh as Niels Bohr.
Great use of just like Kenneth is the new Michael Caine.
I was going to say.
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
This is his third Nolan movie in a row.
Michael Caine seems
doing
kinda
a weird
soft retired.
voice.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
God bless him.
He's really
Yeah.
good actually because he's got the 2 crucial scenes.
Yes.
I thought his is that supposed to be a Danish accent?
Yeah.
Sounded a little like Christopher Walken.
He is a Danish
accent.
physicist.
Yeah,
So
Niels
yes.
Bohr, the Great Dane, we called him.
Yeah.
Woof woof.
We all used to call him that back in the day.
Yeah. So Branagh showing up doing a funny voice, playing Niels Bohr, lost it. I did not realize that Casey Affleck was in this movie,
Okay.
playing
Whoa.
a terrifying
He is
character.
incredible, and he is so well deployed.
Yeah.
He's such a little seething weasel of a fucking. You're immediately
Yes.
like, oh my god, this guy goes home and jerks off about like communists dying.
Yeah.
And you contrast the
he's
way
just
that
like,
Damon
oh, yeah,
describes
what
him.
did he tell you? What did
yeah,
he tell
that's
you? And Damon's like, wait, you talked to that fucking guy? And
Right.
then you're cutting to like a very reserved Casey Affleck,
Yeah.
but just scary.
With his like baby voice.
Yeah,
and,
He just
like
looks like he
Keith Baird.
constantly shaves the character. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? His like so
Right.
close
Yes.
shaven.
Yeah. I mean, that was very I think that is the second most unnerving scene in
Yeah.
There's a lot of unnerving
There are a lot of
scenes in
unnerving
this
The way they
film.
describe this guy, though, you're picturing like Sergeant Rock, and then they keep on cutting back to Casey Affleck,
Right,
and it
right.
makes
Yeah.
them all the scarier to have them be like, this is the fucking worst guy alive. Yeah. Maybe second worst. Hitler's still alive at that point in the movie. Go on.
Third person, Truman. Gary Oldman showing up as Truman.
G.O.
I mean, I think a slam dunk performance.
Yeah.
It's a really
And
it's a
David
really
and
good
I disagree
performance.
strongly on Darkest Hour movie I dislike and a performance I dislike.
Wonderful film, great performance.
And this, he's going similarly big, but I think it
And he's
really,
basically using the same glasses.
really works.
I mean, the pupils are so big.
He's really good. That's right out of history, obviously, that Oppenheimer went to Harry Truman to kind of plead his case.
David.
Uh,
I'm reaching out my handkerchief
Ben's
Yeah.
handing
and
you
waving it
right.
in your fucking face.
And then unfold the
basically
handkerchief.
had a nervous breakdown.
There's an orange slice.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm hungry. Had a nervous breakdown in front of the president in a soft way, at least.
Yeah.
And the president basically, Truman basically had this reaction of like, one, I'm the one who made the decision, crybaby.
Yeah.
Right.
And two, like, I was hoping you come in and be like, hey, yeah, I got some more atom bomb ideas for you. Like not like this whole like the blood on my hands.
Right.
Like,
But
fuck out of my office.
like Truman's like sort of folksiness is as
Well, he's
much
a
of a
Midwestern
posture
fella.
as like Oppenheimer's weird dark cowboy physicist thing.
Right.
You know, like all these guys have these personas they bake on in the same way that Damon's whole thing is like, I'm just a gruff military man. I don't understand
But he went to
science at all.
MIT.
He went to MIT. He
Yeah.
knows everything they're fucking talking about.
At least in a basic sense.
Yes.
He's fascinated by all that
But
stuff.
he like wants to play dumb. Like everyone,
he's got a
Yes.
cowboy streak
Right.
as well. And like,
Yes.
he's trying not to
Right.
hide that.
Yeah.
Who's the fourth?
And then the fourth was Rami Malek, who
So he's really well used.
he is introduced early on and doesn't say a
He's
goddamn
in,
word.
He's in two scenes where he basically doesn't speak, where he's just like part of a gang of scientists who are there.
Yeah.
And I truly was like, there's no way he's not using Moloch.
He's got to do something with
So
it.
I was wondering what it's going to be, but
Yeah.
I think it's so important. One, because Moloch does a great job with that scene, the speech he gives.
Mhm.
And two, because you're just, the minute you see him, you're like, fuck, he's actually right. He was there the whole time. Because the whole conceit of him is that Strauss is like, Hill, who's that again? He won't be mean to me.
Sure.
Right.
I don't even remember who that guy is.
Yeah.
He wasn't at Los Alamos. He was like
was in
working
Chicago
at
with Fermi.
Chicago,
Yes.
one of
Right.
the,
Yeah.
like,
The Chicago Pile, it was
Yes.
called.
Yeah.
The first nuclear reactor, essentially.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Pretty cool, huh?
And it's kind of crazy too that all of these like scientists were just chilling around fucking radiation constantly.
Yeah, I mean, it
Just
wasn't
getting
great for
hooked.
them.
I don't think it was good.
no,
Yeah.
no, not at all.
No, Rami's got big eyes.
Yeah.
He's got some jeepers peepers.
I don't know.
And when his role is basically to have you take notice of the fact that he is watching things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, he's, great point.
Yeah.
That he's witnessing events.
Yeah.
The billing of this movie, you had the big five above the title on the poster.
Murphy, Blunt, Damon, Downey, Pugh.
Right.
Downey taking the fourth spot.
Because it's alphabetical after Killian.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we were like, who else is going to get single card in this crazy cast? Right?
It's crazy cast of Nolan's.
And you're like, it's Josh Hartnett.
Yep.
And then it's the three Oscar winners.
Affleck, Malik, Branagh.
Yeah. As
And
you
then-
pointed out, this film has 5 Oscar winners in it.
Yep.
And,
Those three plus Damon and Down. What am I
and
talking
Branagh
about?
for screenplay.
No, it's Damon, Affleck, Malik, Branagh, and who's the fifth?
Oldman.
Oldman.
Right.
Who's not uncredited, but is
He's buried in
Yeah.
the
Yes.
list or whatever.
Yeah.
Some other. I'm just going to. So Blunt, we talked about Damon. We love that performance. I assume it's just so. Damon. I said this to you in blank dough. You didn't respond. I didn't say it to you. I said it in blank dough.
okay. You keep saying about Damon, I want to climb him like a tree.
I do want to climb.
Is
his
he
ass like a
tall?
tree. He is pretty tall.
No,
isn't he?
he's
Like,
talking more
Affleck
about,
is really tall.
He's talking about the hefty Damon.
Yeah, I
The
climb all
hair-
around him.
Right.
All
I
right,
climb like a
gotcha.
spiral. He's
Yeah,
5'10".
maybe more
He's
like a mountain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So taller than Murphy and
Yeah.
Downey.
I would say, Damon had a bit of a fallow period in his career
Mhm.
around when, like, the fifth Jason Bourne movie and The Great Wall,
Yeah.
where it was sort of like, it's kind of like, what's his move here now? Right.
Right,
Like, what are we
sure.
doing, Damie? Like, and the last 5 years or so, let me start with here. Fucking IMDb sucks so fucking
I mean, Stillwater,
hard.
which I still think is maybe his
That's-
best performance.
Stillwater's
That's what I'm
Great.
saying. Okay, so like,
Yeah.
so you say like that. Well, I mean, The Martian is amazing, but then like
Yeah.
post-Martian, it's Jason Bourne, Great Wall, Downsizing, which I think he's really good in,
Love
but
him
that
in
movie doesn't connect. And
It connects with me
Suburbicon.
hard.
I like
It's a good
downsizing.
movie. It's a good movie. It's a good movie.
American masterpiece.
But then post that, Griff,
Mhm.
I mean, does his little Sodi cameo in Unsane, right?
Yeah.
Which is really good.
And similar kind of Sodi pop in
No Sudden Move,
right.
which is amazing. But his big roles, Ford versus Ferrari, Stillwater, The Last Duel, Air, and this.
Yeah.
He is on a tremendous run
Agreed.
of doing different things.
Yes.
Working in different like modes, making big movies that are not franchise movies or not, and he's awesome in all of those movies.
Yeah. Now, what I love about it is he's trying a lot of different shit, but it almost feels like he's established his new home base as a movie star.
Right.
His default performance mode for maybe his 50s now as he goes into
white fella.
Tired, exasperated, irritated, husky dude.
Like
what are you trying to say to me? Like this energy of just like
that.
out with it.
That's Ford, obviously.
Right.
Stillwater is like a real performance. That's a good movie, and he's just amazing in it.
I'm linking Stillwater, Oppenheimer, Air.
Yeah.
As that feels like his new era.
Last Duel, he's fucking hilarious in that movie.
Yes.
He's such a buffoon.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah.
He's happy to make himself the butt of jokes.
Yes.
And then, this and Air, it's just, like it's that energy.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert Downey Jr., do you like the performance?
Incredible.
I think he's, gonna win an Oscar.
I think he probably is.
I think it's just kind of that uncorking thing. That buddy, we knew you had it in you.
It's weird to see both these guys we're talking about now kind of looking old.
Well,
look, Downey Jr., I know
RDJ's wearing makeup.
Yeah.
He lost weight. He shaved his hairline back. He looks a lot like his father in this, which I found very fascinating. And his father was obviously this great countercultural figure. He was about as opposite from Strauss as you could get. But especially in sort of the latest period of the movie, if people haven't seen Senior, which is the documentary about his father. It's really good. But there's a really strong resemblance there. And he's even talked about in interviews of like, it was wild to look at myself in the mirror.
And be like, this is me in 15 years.
Because everything, he hasn't done anything transformative in 15 years as an actor.
Not
right?
Since Tropic Thunder.
Right. That's the last movie where he looked different. And he looked quite different in that movie.
Yes.
But now it's like, what's the big move we're doing for Doolittle? Stubble, no mustache. Like everything's like adjusting a little bit the default Downey look. And this is him really changing his look up. And I think he said he looked in the mirror and he saw his dad and he was just like, oh, I have not seen myself look like this. Because to a certain degree, he has been preventing himself from aging because he's an A-list movie star. The other thing I read in an interview is he was talking about, I think it's in that New York Times piece, where he was saying like the way that Nolan works is so sort of like Spartan and such a team effort and there are no egos and everything. And he said we were like setting up a shot and Nolan was like framing the camera around me. I was sitting in a chair and he was like, I have to run quickly. Can I just hand this off to you? Or he handed him a roll of film or something. He handed Downey Jr. a piece of equipment and was like, I'll be back in 1 second. And he was like, this would never happen on a Marvel movie. And this isn't him showing disrespect for me, but it's like, we're all just in this together. And he was like, I haven't had to hold equipment on a set in so long. And he was like, this is what I grew up with, was my dad.
Grew up around cameras.
Like, handing me film canisters. And he was like, it was such a nice moment. And I read that and I went, I bet Nolan did that on purpose.
Right.
I absolutely believe in a canny way Nolan was like,
what am I going to do to Robert?
Right, this is like a sensory,
give him a film canister.
Tactile experience.
David,
performance better.
I'm so into your Nolan voice. I'm sorry.
I am too.
But you just feel that. You feel him being, not just that he's uncorked, but that he's like really connected into the meat of the movie.
It's nice that he got to be, on a real set.
Yes.
I hope he does more of this kind
wearing
of
an actual costume, not wearing pajamas.
Florence Pugh we talked about.
Yep.
Josh Hartnett, we talked about,
Yeah, just got to acknowledge that he looks like Aaron Sorkin.
He does.
He's got the hair that looks like
and the little
Sorkin
glasses.
Oh.
Glad we caught that on mic.
And surround.
Fucking Jesus. You guys gonna start a musical about people who look like Aaron Sorkin and the little glasses? I think that's a wonderful performance.
Yeah.
Made me really want to check in with Hartnett. Like
apparently that was a ruse de
de
guerre.
Guerre. Well, Bilge was going on about that. Like I love Bilge to death, but sometimes he'll be like, and I'm like, what?
He did 2 Guy Ritchies.
Yeah, he's really. I mean, I'm a big fan of Wrath of Man, which he's also in. He's not the best part of it or anything like that. I have not seen Ruse de Guerre. Casey Affleck we mentioned, Malik we mentioned, Brandon we mentioned. Benny Safdie is wonderful as Edward Teller. He's playing a guy who essentially Doctor Strangelove was based on.
Yes.
And that Edward Teller had that accent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's a little Watto-y.
But like, and it's really interesting to hear Safdie talk about it, where he's like, "I'm listening. Nolan's giving me all these tapes of this guy speaking, and he sounds like this,
right?"
And I'm like, "How hard am I supposed to hit this?"
Right.
Like,
and is there any way to do this and not make it sound goofy, no matter how accurate
and
I
I
go?
think he
It's
totally
like a
nails
Hungarian
it.
accent.
Yeah, like a thick Hungarian accent, and he totally nails.
He's also a grumpy Gus. Like everything
exactly,
about
this guy just had
feels,
this energy.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, "Hi, Edward," and he goes, "Yes," like or whatever. Like he's just kind of an asshole.
He's like at one point in like a early meeting when they're just setting up Los Alamos. He's like, "This is more important," and he just like sort of interrupts Oppie.
Right.
And like Benny Safdie, who has weirdly become the character actor of his generation,
of the moment, yes.
the guy that every fucking major director wants to slot in. I was saying to Marie, I love Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah.
I felt him being a little unmoored in that movie.
Sure.
Where that
He's
role,
good. I mean, he's got nice energy, obviously.
but like that's a role where the whole point is like you kind of just want like a solid,
Good
simple,
vibes,
kind of
yeah.
uncomplicated guy. And I felt like he was struggling more to play a guy who didn't have like he's
didn't have some weird thing about him.
He's really good at actually doing the work if you put a really complicated assignment on his
Right.
plate,
He's
which
great-
is
he's great in
fascinating for a
Licorice
guy
Pizza.
who was not
Yeah.
like intending to be an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Clarke, King of Cucks.
Yeah.
Dylan Arnold, not an actor I'm that familiar with. He's the guy. He's in the Halloween movies, the Gordon Green movies, as Frank Oppenheimer.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The
But
brother.
he's really, really
that's who
strong
he is.
face
Yeah, okay.
resemblance,
Yes.
both to Killian and to the real Frank
Yes.
Oppenheimer.
They do a really good job on the aging in this movie too. By the way, we're like so
They do.
fucking
Yeah.
grateful when we cut to Oppenheimer University and there is no fucking de-aging. You just put him in a different wig and you let an actor play a different age.
I think they didn't even. Again, Nolan hates wigs. I think they just cut his hair different. They like make his
Maybe.
hair stand up.
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think he was a little heavier.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah,
just
that's
like, you
all.
look
I
just buy
tired.
it.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
you
sure,
totally
you're
buy it.
tired.
And they basically don't really go hard on aging makeup until the
one-
Fermi
the
Prize
one
scene, which is so
sequence.
brief.
But they do use aging makeup in subtle
do.
ways. Like they have like more eye folds.
But it feels like the very
And,
classical
yeah.
of like, oh, they're putting like burnt apple skin on their face. It's just like it's just classic
Yeah.
movie, like right.
Yeah. No, totally. Tom Conti comes
Tom
in, range
Conti.
threes.
Yes.
Just absolutely fucking dominates.
Yes. And like a
Mr.
thing-
Lawrence himself.
The only celebrity my mother has ever written a fan letter to
Is
is
Tom
Tom
Lawrence?
Conti, and he replied.
What
did he say?
He, I assume, said thank you and was very nice about it. She wrote him a letter about his performance in the Broadway play Whose Life Is It Anyway?
Wow.
Which he won the Tony for in
Okay.
1979. She said it's the only time I ever was like so moved by something, and she was younger, like that I felt compelled to write a fan letter.
Wow.
And he replied,
Is that the play that Mary Tyler Moore replaced him in?
that actually sounds true.
Mary
Yes,
Tyler
there was
Moore
a gender
replaced him?
reverse
Yeah.
version
Interesting.
of it. It's about a guy who's paralyzed
Yeah,
from the neck
that's
down.
it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
'Cause I just watched that Mary Tyler Moore documentary. And they talk
She
about
got
it.
like a
watch that.
special Tony for
Yeah,
the gender
because they
reverse
couldn't give
version.
her a
Right,
Tony
because
because she didn't
it
originate
was
the role.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
But that he's best known, I think, for that, for Reuben, which she got an Oscar nomination
And for Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence.
and just honestly, a lot of others. He's a great character actor. He's in
he's-
Friends, I believe.
He's in the hole with Bruce Wayne in Dark Knight Rises, telling
Yes,
him to
he is.
crawl up.
Yeah.
He
Yes.
is. I mean,
Right.
I do love it when Nolan brings guys off the bench in
Yeah.
that way.
But no, this is the thing that should break the movie.
No,
to have sort of
yeah.
like magical Einstein
Right.
popping in at the appropriate moments, a thing that is really a narrative
he
creation.
does pop in at one point, which is fun.
Yeah.
Like behind the taxi.
Yeah.
Yes, the one fiction Nolan is allowing
Right.
himself is that when Oppenheimer took those calculations of like, are we going to blow up the
Yeah.
world? He took it to a different scientist.
Right.
He had
And
a
Nolan-
relationship with
he did,
Einstein,
he did.
but
They all
these scenes are all created.
Nolan's like he should talk to Einstein as this figure of the past
Yes.
that they all revere, but are also moving beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Einstein was very negative about quantum theory and didn't like the idea of chaos
Yeah.
in science.
Kind of
And
an
so
anti-Joker.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why he did battle with the Joker.
He did.
But like, so Einstein sort of wouldn't engage with their theories at a certain point and spent the rest of his life sort of trying to negate them.
Mhm.
But they love him still. And that's the role he plays.
Mhm.
James Darcy is Blackett. Fun
Yeah.
little one scene performance there.
Yeah.
Eating the apple.
Mm-hmm.
And then
David Dalmatian,
Alden
Dust Malchian.
Dane, both incredibly good, I think.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took a photo of the title card that had Alden Dane and David Dasmachalian or whatever his name
The
is.
Karen Boy card.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, Jesus Christ, these three guys.
It is that thing. I think
Tony
no-
Goldwyn is just always good as some Washington
and
fuck.
mentioned early, but Macon Blair I think is really good in this.
Macon Blair is really good.
There's a
And also, I was like, that was Macon Blair?
Yeah, I
like,
didn't know
I
it
didn't
was
realize
him.
that
really?
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Interesting.
there's
Jeff-
a Skarsgård in this movie.
Good stuff.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of yeah.
Love
Which
him.
one is he the
He's Hans Beta.
He's
is he the tall
Yeah.
bald guy? Okay.
bald guy.
Yeah.
Jefferson Hall is Hakan Chevalier, the sort of
Of
the,
the
the truest
Chev-
communist
yes,
Yeah.
of the
of
Chevalier.
the Chevalier. When
It's-
you're reading the
What
book,
a
they keep
devastating scene when they show up with the baby.
he's got a really good face.
He does.
That guy. He's on House of the Dragon right now. What else do I know him from? He's got a good face.
Yeah.
He's on Vikings apparently.
Jack Quaid playing bongos. Richard
Yeah.
Feynman.
Love him. Look, Jack Quaid just showed up on the best show on television, Strange New Worlds, playing his cartoon character from fucking Lower
In live
Decks.
action or
Yes.
animated? Okay.
The episode opens in animated, then he gets sucked through a portal into live action
That's
100
cool.
years ago.
Yeah.
And he's got purple hair.
Great.
I love Jack Quaid, and I want him. Damon, you're out. I'm subbing in a 20 years younger guy. Quaid,
Wow.
hop in.
Okay.
Damn.
Is he 20 years younger?
At
31. He's pretty young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love him in this, though. That guy was fun.
Yeah.
The guy he's playing.
Yeah.
And I think Nolan probably just thinks like Quaid's got a fun energy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Josh Peck, which a lot of people were very surprised by him being cast in this movie.
He's good.
And he plays the guy who pushes the button.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Bainbridge.
putting my theory out here, and I have told this to David Sims. I'm betting you that Oppenheimer will not be in David Ehrlich's top 25, but the countdown where Josh Peck.
Look, if you don't put this in your
presses the
top
button.
25, I'm going to drag you on every episode of Blank Check in 2024. Every single one, a drive-by.
But yeah,
Even ones you're on.
never have I seen a countdown
Yeah.
so perfectly suited
Yeah.
for Ehrlich's purposes.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah.
Good looking countdown.
Yeah, great
It is.
countdown.
We mentioned Modine Krumholtz just once again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Krumholtz is my
What a
favorite
bubby.
in the favorite performance in this movie.
It's an amazing
he enters into this movie.
You've seen it twice. There's the scene on the train.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of the convening of the Jews a little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
West side of the park,
I
east side of the
see you.
park.
Right.
He's from downtown. I think he's just making fun of him for being like, Oppenheimer was a
crust.
Tony boy, went
Sure.
to
Right.
ethical culture from the Upper West Side.
Krumholtz
you
was
know.
more of an Obi boy,
Exactly.
a drama
Well,
desk boy.
Well,
He enters into this movie, and my immediate thought was like, man, the next 40 years of Krumholtz's career are going to be so good.
he's gonna be eating them oranges.
Right. And he's been on like a good upside,
Yeah.
like obviously like Leopold Strauss and all these things. But then you're just like, this feels like it's like really crystallizing on such a grand stage.
Do you know him?
I've met him. He's a very nice man. I wouldn't say I know him. I'm not friends with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's sort of odd to engage with in a way, but also he likes you, or he likes
been
things
very-
you've done.
he's
I
been
know
very
he
nice to
follows
me.
you on Instagram.
He's been very nice to me and
I'm
very
like,
supportive
oh,
of my work.
Is he a friend of
I
the
would
pod?
love to get him on the podcast.
Come
I
on the
don't know
pod,
if he's ever
Crumb.
listened.
Well, hey, if you're listening,
Yeah.
we'd love to have
he
you.
weirdly came to one of my
Give us a
UCB
crumb.
shows years ago and
Wait,
was
really?
and was like
And he
it was
DM'd you saying, "This is
no,
David
he came up
Krumholtz."
to me backstage. It was he came to the best sketch I ever did. It was like if there was
Oh,
ever a
nice.
night where
Right.
Krumholtz was going to see me,
Now, did he ride an elf jetpack in?
he did.
Okay, good.
And he had like the little elf ninjas with him.
Yeah, good.
And then he did George Lucas a couple months ago. So I've only met
Oh, he
him
did it recently.
twice.
Sure.
But both times I've had very nice conversations
Sort of
with
a
him.
crumb sandwich.
A little bit of a crumb sandwich, a crumb cake.
He was one of my earliest childhood crushes.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there have been so many pieces written about the fucking what's it? Why am I forgetting his character's name in Santa Claus?
I don't know.
It's not
Bernard.
Boris. It's not Bernard.
Bernard.
Bernard. But it wasn't even the Bernard. It was him
10
and
things I
Adam's
hate
Family
about
Values.
you.
It- Adam's Family Values.
Yeah.
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 He was such a cutie.
Yeah. Yeah, just that's a guy where you're just like he has been doing good work at every age,
Yeah.
and he evolves and he changes.
Yeah.
but like he's always good.
Who else? Oh, Alex Wolff.
Alex Wolff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, these are guys who serve face.
Yes.
I just need 1 second of their face
Right.
to retain Wolf's here.
Yeah.
DeHaan's here. you
Ali
know?
Hascavi is the one who you were doing the impression of at the beginning of the episode, who's a very good actor, New York
Yeah.
theater actor, who's been doing more film and television recently.
Olivia Thirlby, you'll
But
love to
plays
see
the guy
her.
who basically quits in protest.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
Fuck this shit
Right.
after a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Damon's like, maybe we'll have him killed. Just kidding.
I always get his name wrong, but Josh Zuckerman, I think, is the one who's the first pupil in the class.
Yes. Kyle XY character, apparently.
He was a Kyle XY character?
Apparently.
I think he's young Dr. Evil in Goldmember. That's who he will forever be to me.
You're right.
Yes.
Christopher Denham is Klaus Fuchs, the Soviet spy.
Yes.
And I think, am I wrong? Does he play the same guy on Manhattan?
Manhattan is all like fictionalized.
Yes, he doesn't play the same
people,
character,
but he plays a similar type of guy, I think. Yeah.
On Manhattan, characters like Oppenheimer are sort of like background characters who occasionally come in, but most of the main characters are sort of inspired by
Gotcha.
And Manhattan is mostly about how everyone was fucking each other.
Yeah.
He's kind of the idea of like this city of scientists is the idea of Manhattan, which is
really
cool.
easy to sell a TV show by just
when
saying...
WGN America was buying them, but go on.
But also just to go like, we all know this thing, right? What if everyone was fucking during that?
Right.
And basic cable would just like throw money at you. Pay cable would throw even more as long as you had nudity waivers. Go on. I'm trying to think if there are other big.
No, that's basically
scenes.
everyone. Look, big scenes.
We could talk about this movie for.
We could.
87
and
episodes.
I want to see it again. In IMAX, I want to know. So, I mean, I heard some complaints, classic Nolan complaints of, in IMAX especially, somewhat hard to hear the dialogue because it's such a cacophony of sound and score.
We saw a 70mm screening together when there was an IMAX screening happening above at the same time.
Right.
And when we talked to people who were in the IMAX screening, they were like, some of the dialogue I couldn't make out. Sure. And that's obviously...
And there's so much dialogue at the start.
Constant Nolan hit. And a lot of that is he doesn't want to do ADR. He wants to use production audio when you're filming with IMAX cameras.
Right.
It involves some trickery to remove that sound from the equation. What have you. But we did not have that complaint walking out of the 70mm screening. Going into IMAX, I was curious to see if we had it. I don't know if it's because I had already heard the dialogue one time, but I did not find it as sort of disorienting a mix as maybe some of his past films.
No, I thought it was incredible in IMAX.
Yeah.
Well,
you just anytime they cut to the true IMAX shots were just like...
Which is quite often.
I was going to say, isn't it sort of most of...
Yeah, the majority of the movie shot.
Yeah. And... you just see his big ass face in like the greatest resolution imaginable, but with like this real kind of like texture and warmth. I mean, they had to develop black and white IMAX film because it was a thing that no one had ever asked for before.
Right. Yep. And they have to like start the damn thing on time because it's so fucking long that they like can't even load previews onto the reel.
Well, for us, what they did was they played 20 minutes of trailers on the IMAX laser projector, and then they clearly switched projectors. And there's the great moment where you hear suddenly it's like the trailers end, Nicole Kidman, lights out, and then you hear like and then suddenly
I mean, it's wild shit. That he was filming like these dialogue scenes with a fucking IMAX camera.
Like Nolan, I think it's coming out from like benevolent ends, but like every decision he's making in his career carries weight in that kind of way of like, if I want to shoot this in black and white, new technology has to be developed. You know?
And IMAX is like, okay.
How many movies started shooting in IMAX after him?
Right. So box office, or is there anything else we want to discuss?
Can we do a quick ranking? Maybe not of all. Where does this rank in the Nolan oeuvre?
That's a really tough question.
I have it second.
I had it.
I've only seen the movie once. I'm gonna wrestle with it. It's a fluid thing for me always, but I have it above everything but Interstellar, which is my
I had it at third under The Prestige and Dunkirk.
I have third.
Prestige is my number one.
But I think I'm gonna put Oppenheimer, now that I've seen it twice, I'm gonna put that at number one. I think it's his best movie.
God bless you. I do think it's a monumental achievement for Mr. Nolan.
Okay, let me look over to Christopher Nolan, my Letterboxd private list of Christopher Nolan films.
I'm seeing here that you've been banned by Letterboxd.
I've actually been promoted. I'm now the CEO. My ranking, but I think this was my ranking at the time of when we did the
list
miniseries.
You gave on this show
was
or whatever.
Prestige, Inception, Memento, Batman Begins, Insomnia, Interstellar, Dark Knight, Tenet, Dunkirk, Dark Knight Rises, following Oppenheimer.
Well, Oppenheimer last?
Well, no, I'm saying Oppenheimer just added. Sorry, following would have been last. But that I feel like I'd rethink this whole thing now.
It's always moving around, you know?
I feel like Oppenheimer and Interstellar would be my 2 and 3 now, and I'm not quite sure where I would land both of them. But I've seen Interstellar several more times since we've done that episode.
Best movie.
It's a really fucking good movie.
Sure is. Ben, where do you put Oppie? What's your Oppie thought? Final Oppie thought?
Scientists were cool at one point.
Well, my final thought is I deeply enjoyed the movie. There's so much in there. It's like there's the world of atoms, and then there's just like you pull out from there. And I feel like the JFK mention, the just
very Nolan-y little moment.
Yeah.
The fact that he wrote a paper about black holes, and I was like reading about that. Like I found myself. It's such an expansive movie. There's so much in there that you could like write a whole. You could take a whole fucking class.
Any criticism of this movie being myopic, it's like that's a specific story he wants to tell. There are many tellings of this time, which is so expansive that there is no way to create a work that is all encompassing of everything, right?
Yeah.
But I also think he is so fascinated in like, what does it feel like to be inside that moment? You know. That singular moment, like your whole life sort of, someone had I think it was a Letterboxd review joke of like, hold on, Oppenheimer needs to think about his entire life before he sets off the bomb, like making the walk hard joke, right? But it is that. It's like an entire life leading up to this one moment that defines humanity, and then the wind down from that.
Right.
And like, how do you handle a moment like that? You don't, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the book though.
You should. The book's great read.
Yeah.
I have the audiobook.
I'm currently deep in my newest doorstop, which is the new Pulitzer Prize winning biography of J. Edgar Hoover. I'm going to read it and then finally watch the Clint Eastwood movie. Joking. I already watched the Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, I was about to say, what?
Yeah, it's not good.
But, I love post-war and, that period of American history. It's so interesting and complicated and dark.
Yeah. I just want to also mention growing up in high school, I had a poster of the atomic bomb.
Ben did tell us this before we recorded.
I still haven't dug it up, and I'm going to find a photo
Just
of me smoking
cloud.
weed in front of it.
Wow.
Who would dare?
Yeah.
This film opened at
You ever think about it, though? It's like crazy that he did
This film opened at number 2 at the box office, Griffin. Are you aware?
I'm aware.
To a healthy $82 million.
I would say an astonishing number.
Both it and Barbie doubled their tracking, but Barbie's tracking always seemed
Low.
like Warner Brothers
was
was kind of
downplaying
like trying to downplay the hype.
Right.
Oppenheimer tracking at 40, I was like, that's a pretty healthy number for a 3-hour
And I think
R-rated
everyone
biopic.
said, like, if that gets to 50, you'll be seen as a slam dunk, and 80 is almost, like, incomprehensible.
And much like Barbie, it is now just, like, eating every day, like, Monday to, like, its box office success is massive. It's the biggest opening of Nolan's career that's not a Batman movie.
Yeah. Wow.
It's the biggest biographical opening ever, except for American Sniper. Not The Passion of the Christ, The Hollywood Reporter.
Uh-huh.
That is not a biographical movie. Jesus did not invent chairs, for example, which is something or tables. Or something.
So I had a tweet about this where I kind of dunked on the Hollywood Reporter, and I was like, can we call that a biographical film? And people were like, Jesus actually existed as a historical figure. And I'm like,
of course he did.
Excuse me. As
That's
someone
not
who was
what that
on
movie
Blank
is.
Check's Benedetta episode, I'm very familiar with Paul Verhoeven's work on the historical Jesus.
Right.
Do they call it X'd now? Did I X'd?
Okay, so number
fucking
1
know.
was Griffin. What was number 1 at the box office?
Number 1 at the box office was the Barbie movie, also just titled Barbie.
Barbie, which made $162 million in 3 days.
Yeah.
And is now making $25 million every weekday. I have friends going to screenings, my colleagues, my film critic friends. Like Allison was just texting me. She's like, I'm at AMC Lincoln Square. Everyone here is a woman in pink.
Yes.
Like this is this rare thing where it's like, this is a phenomenon.
Yeah, but the thing that is
and
totally...
then there's one guy in a trench coat with a wide-brimmed hat.
The thing
he
that
looks
is
lost in thought.
unprecedented and unreplicatable is that like everyone bought into the collective spirit of this thing.
Yes.
And the Barbie people were like, we should see Oppenheimer. And the Oppenheimer
like,
people
see
were like,
we
should see Barbie.
Go see
Right.
Barbie.
Everyone was just like,
shaking hands. Yeah.
Damon had this interview where he was like, the thing that excites me about this movie is like this used to exist. Big studios with big stars making important movies about difficult subjects. And we would go, I need to go see that.
Right.
Even if that's not necessarily my genre, quote unquote. There is like some sense of this is important, I should contend with this, right? And you're like, Oppenheimer has now basically outgrossed most Best Picture winners in one weekend of the last 15 years.
totally. I mean, it's probably going to win Best Picture.
Right. And
I'll say
you
it
just
right
feel
now.
people who like don't
Right?
usually.
I mean, well, I don't know.
It's the front runner.
It's the
Yeah.
front runner. People who don't usually see this type of movie felt like, well, no, I think this is like culturally important to go see this. I need to contend with this thing.
Sure.
And they felt the same way about Barbie, and that's really fucking exciting.
It's great.
I brought my mom and dad to see Barbie. Everyone wore pink.
Yep.
It was really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My wife went to see it today.
Did she wear pink?
Don't know that she wears a lot of
I don't
pink
know
in
if
her
I've ever
life.
seen your wife wear pink.
Neither have I.
And of course, I
But-
know your wife better than
course you do.
We went to high school together.
Yes, that's true. Oppenheimer opening to $82 million. Number 3 at the box office, Sound of Freedom. Moving
Let's
on.
not talk about that.
Number
next
4 at the
one.
box office, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Uh-huh.
Making 120 mil over the last 2 weeks. Undeniably disappointing.
Look, the Sound of Freedom thing they could not have seen coming. And I
What do you
do
mean?
think
What's
that
that
has
The
served-
entity put it there.
I think that has weirdly become direct competition to Mission Impossible more
Little
than
bit.
any other movie.
Yeah.
I think it is the one being hit the hardest by
Generally,
it.
we agree. They fucked up putting this
fucked up.
movie a week before Oppenheimer.
Yes.
Like, literally, you have actually built a brand of Tom Cruise equals large format.
Yes.
Why are you going to put this
Not only that,
movie
but you did
behind
it-
the one movie that's definitely going to be on IMAX
It's the
screens?
one guy he can't beat.
The one
in a-
guy you can't beat is
Right.
Nolan. Oh, Nolan's middle initial is I
Yes.
for IMAX.
Yes. Yes. And then, right.
The
And then,
movie's still, the thing about it is it's like the movie's still doing fine.
Sure.
It's doing well internationally.
yeah.
And the 8th movie is being made. So I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of sweat over Mission Impossible underperforming.
Yeah.
But still, it's a good movie.
Can I?
Cruise would ever work with Nolan?
He should.
He should.
He fucking should be
He
begging
should.
to work with Nolan.
He should. Like, that's the next move should be the two of them
Yes.
being like, let's come up with the thing. I want to put this on mic, okay? Because our Mission Impossible episode came out a week ago, but we recorded it several weeks ago.
Sure.
And the world has changed
It sure has.
since then. The scuttlebutt when they announced that they were going to do a 2-part Mission Impossible sequel, right? Was like Tom Cruise
You
knocking
say
on the
this on the
doorstep of
episode.
60.
Yes.
They maybe want to get as
You
much
s-
in the can as they can,
Yes.
as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And of course, what they thought would be a 2-year production has basically become a 5-year production.
Endless production. Yes.
Right. But also, what happens in between that time, a thing I did not say on mic, is that Top Gun becomes so big that suddenly Tom Cruise is hotter than ever.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he goes, fuck it, I'm not leaving. I'm going to keep making these forever. Because recently in the press, he was saying, I'm not ending. I never said the next one was the last
Right.
one. I
Now,
want
on
to do
our
them until I'm
episode,
80.
you wonder, is this a smoke screen
to
make,
create some actual
make-
narrative tension.
if the last one's the last one, make it hit harder or whatever.
Right.
But maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe he's like, I'm Tom Cruise. I'm invincible.
What I have thought in the week since we recorded that episode is he went into it thinking that I guess it's time to get out while the getting's good, and then went like, maybe I don't need to leave. Maybe I'm better than I've ever been. And I do wonder if the slightly softer box office performance of this film going into the next one, which is not finished, which is only half shot and currently on hiatus because of the strike, I do wonder if they go back to it and go, maybe it's time to like put a bow on this. For a franchise that had been growing for several installments
I'll
in a
say
row.
this, Griffin.
I just want to throw it out on mic.
Maybe you're right.
Maybe I'm right. We'll see what happens.
I don't know.
Can we talk about the strike quickly?
Yes.
Sure.
I do think it's important to talk about on mic. We've been banking episodes up like crazy. Even Mission
Griffin's
Impossible.
off to Bonnie, Scotland.
Going to Edinburgh to do the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with The Baron and the Junk Dealer and George Lucas Talk Show, a play that Connor Ratliff has written in the world of the George Lucas Talk Show, our comedy show we do together, and also doing a couple of performances of the actual thing. So we've been banking up episodes like crazy. We are already basically half done on the miniseries that comes out after Park, which we haven't even announced yet. Who knows? The Park episodes were done a while ago, and even as I said, Mission Impossible we did like 3 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah.
So none of the other episodes you will hear for a while now will really address the strike as it's
True.
going on, and there's just been understandably a lot of questioning about like, does that affect the podcast at all? And that is because it has been a very long time since SAG went on strike. The last time was 1980.
Maybe. The 60 was the big strike. Did they have a brief one in 80?
There's the one where Powers Booth, the thing
Yeah,
that's at the
yeah.
beginning of I'll Do Anything, the James L.
1980.
Brooks
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
I think it's
right.
1980. So it's been about 43 years. To say the industry has changed a lot in the last 43 years is an understatement.
Right. They had less podcasts back then.
A couple fewer.
They
And
did have the Flophouse, though. Yeah.
They did. No, the Flophouse and Film Spotting were the two.
Yeah, right.
But they were the Cinecast at that point. But even the writer's strike, the last time WGA went on strike was 2007 to 2008. And things have changed so radically in that time that I think a lot of the hand-wringing that people are seeing out in the public sphere about what is okay to do or what is not is unclear because everything has changed so radically since the last time any of these major unions went on strike.
Is happening on the fly, sort of figuring out this stuff.
By the way, that's a lot of why we are striking, is because a lot of these lines have gotten blurred in terms of what is work and what isn't, and what do we deserve to be paid for and what do we not, and what is promotion and what isn't, you know? We've gotten to this weird space where companies basically expect, the biggest media companies in the world expect all of the people who work on their projects to do free advertising for the project in their own platforms that they've spent decades creating to ostensibly give value to the projects. It's all fucked. Everything's fucked. And it's bad. All this to say, people are understandably confused, concerned, whatever, about my status as someone who is a member of SAG-AFTRA and hosts a podcast that is about movies.
Right.
These things are being defined and redefined over and over again. There was an FAQ that came out yesterday. We stay up with these things and read them, but this is primarily a comedy show of film criticism. What we do here is not, even if we are on an episode like today, doing an Oppenheimer episode, promoting movies,
Criticism is not promotion.
Exactly. And if those lines are blurred, that
Obviously,
is perhaps...
I'm not in SAG, but...
Right. But there does
remember.
need to be a distinction between the two things. And I do think...
Now, we were paid by Universal to do this episode.
Wildly. We're going to retire
Handsomely.
with the money we made on this episode.
Right. But
We hated
Being
it.
very clear that that's a joke.
But that's
It's
a joke.
It's a joke.
And that's important to remember.
It's a joke.
And we didn't write it down.
We didn't write it. Pencils firmly down on the table.
I don't know if you guys know this, but we don't really write anything we say on this show. It's a little off the cuff.
This show is wildly unscripted. It is independent. We rarely work in conjunction with any larger entities.
Yes.
We rarely even book guests through publicists or specifically to promote specific
never.
things. I can think of very few examples. What is at stake? What will change because of the strike happening? An episode you wouldn't hear is having Benji and Dan on to talk about Detective Pikachu, a movie they wrote the week the movie is coming out.
Right.
That is basically the only type of episode that we wouldn't do right now, and that is the only time in the history of 8 years of doing this show we have done anything like that.
Right, you can imagine something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, plug section, a thing we often forget to even do, will not be happening, right?
No, I mean, again, we recorded a lot of stuff before the strike. Maybe there are plugs there, but I don't think there's really any promotion happening of like current projects even that I can think of.
Not really what this show is.
I mean, we had Zaslav on that one episode.
Yeah, but he was good.
So funny.
He's funny.
The bits.
That was but yes,
unscripted.
Pencils down. There are a couple of new release movies that are currently on our spreadsheet for the rest of the year that are directors we've covered in the past who have films that hopefully, knock on wood, will not get bumped to 2024 and will come out before this year. Wouldn't happen for a couple of months. I would love to believe that these strikes are resolved in a way that is fucking beneficial.
It up, guys. I'm speaking to the studios.
To the workers
yes.
who make the product, that they are no longer treated like fucking
admit
garbage.
Your failure.
Yes.
Like, admit that you have played this wrong from the beginning.
Look, there are a couple CEOs who need to get down on their knees and take a big L.
Gotta take an L.
That's the moment. Some L's need to be taken, and they do not need to be taken from the artists who make these projects.
Executives love taking L's. It's one of their favorite things to do.
Yeah, so just go to the fucking public square, stand up tall, adjust your tie, and take the biggest fucking L you've ever taken in your life.
I'd love to see that.
Yes.
I'm excited to see that.
But yes, for the time being, we've read over everything. There is nothing about what SAG is defining in terms of what they are encouraging their members to not do during the strike that conflicts with this show. And if there's stuff in there in the language that makes you feel like, well, that sounds like they're describing Blank Check, a lot of that is because the language of all this stuff is weird and messy, and there is so much stuff like podcasts that are explicitly promoting a TV show that an actor is on and all that sort of stuff. But
We're
don't
fiercely
have to
independent,
worry.
baby.
Yes.
Not even part of a studio.
No. We're part of Blank Check Productions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a registered S corp.
Which is wild. But our name's a little too long, so it doesn't fit on the documents, and it says Blank Check Productio.
Yeah, it sure does.
The N and the S are cut off.
Productio. Number 5 at the box office. It's the 5th film in a long-running franchise, slightly
Insidious, the fifth
underperforming.
key.
No,
Or
that's
the
6th.
Lost Key, the Red Key. What's
That's
it called?
6th.
The Red
That's
Door.
6th. It's the Red Door. That's 6 though.
Okay.
Indiana Jones. No.
Indiana Jones and the Daleks.
Is it- oh.
Yeah.
Which honestly has made $350-ish million worldwide. It's not good.
No.
But it's not nothing.
No.
Insidious Red Door has made 160 worldwide. Insidious Red Door is fucking clowning on everyone else.
Yeah.
Elemental's holding really well. It's actually going to sort of end up being an okay hit for Pixar.
Yeah, I mean, if it had done that number to begin with, it still would have ended up in the bottom 3 Pixar movies. But it
it's not
opened
like
so
it's not an
low.
embarrassment.
No,
Right.
it will end up ahead of Lightyear and ahead of Good Dinosaurs.
Across
What-
the Spider-Verse,
else?
obviously a giant hit.
Yeah.
What else are people going to take their kids to right now?
Nothing.
That's
Nothing.
why. That's why
it's
Elemental is holding.
That's why it's holding.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there was a
Um,
lot of, hand wringing over if Barbie
Well,
was
there's
appropriate
Rudy
for children.
Gilman, Teenage Kraken.
Which
Oh my
I
God.
think
You thought
was
is good.
Rise of the Beasts has made $420 million
It's
worldwide.
also kind of just hanging in there because little boys need something to see.
And No Hard Feelings has quietly crept to 50 to domestic.
A movie that has really grown on me. Marie, we saw that together. I don't know
We
how
did.
you feel.
I'm a wreck.
The more I think about it, the more I like it.
Yeah, it's
And
a
I'm
good
seeing
movie.
here The Flash has made $1 billion.
Take the billion.
DCEU continues.
Downgrade that to $1 million. No, Ninja Turtles comes out in August, and that will have its room until the Mighty movie enters and just licks up the
Don't
box office.
forget. Chomp, 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 chomp.
Who's chomping?
The
Pac-Man?
Meg.
Oh,
She's
yeah,
coming
the
out of the
Meg.
I was just
trench.
talking with kids' movies.
Oh, that's true.
Right. But it's a thing that's been talked about. The kids' movies are too spaced out, and
Yeah,
they're
they are. Well,
generally overperforming
We're
outside
going
of
to
Ruby
see
Gilman,
lots
who
of
got
kids'
done
movies
dirty.
2 years from now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's always a reaction to 2 years ago.
Of course. Yeah.
Sing 2 was still at the theater when I went.
Hey, man.
They
At
do that
Regal.
sort of.
It's weird.
They will do
No,
like.
it wasn't.
Are you joking?
No, I'm pretty sure.
They will do this thing for like weekend matinees where they like bring back a classic, like Sing 2. I'm not even kidding. Like Regal and AMC will be like Sunday matinees of a classic from the vault.
It was so weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not. It's playing at the Look Dine-In Cinemas on 57th
I've
Street.
seen Sing 2 showing up a lot lately. It must have cheap licensing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
A movie I saw and could not wrap my head around.
Wow.
Unlike Ruby Gilman, which made perfect sense.
I'll check it out.
I'm excited to watch
In,
Ruby
like, 5
Gilman.
years from now.
Yeah.
I think your daughter would love Ruby Gilman.
In a couple of years. Right now, my daughter loves one movie.
Moana.
Ponyo.
I watch it
Oh.
every day.
And you
No joke every day.
and that is why I'm specifically saying I think your daughter might like Ruby Gilman.
Because water,
We're like,
fish people.
It's got a similar
we're,
vibe.
we're going to have to build up to introducing. We're still at the stage where it's like a second movie will be an interesting concept to her. She's kind of like, I got Ponyo though. Like, I
But
want
didn't
Ponyo.
she go through a huge Moana phase?
She's watched a lot of Moana songs.
She's watching
Oh,
clips.
But
She-
Moana the movie is a little intense. You know, it's got Tafiti.
Yeah.
Tafiti's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's got
Very
more
shiny.
talking. Ponyo is just so
The shining
perfect for a
crab.
toddler
Sure.
because it's just about a little toddler.
Yeah.
Like making a mess and causing chaos. Like it's very, very simple. And
Well,
it's about
Ruby
5-year-olds.
Gilman's about a nice kid who happens to be a teenage Kraken.
All right. Well, I have to go home.
Rubber hose animation. Their limbs are going like this. It's fun. It's goofy.
We've been recording for 3 hours.
Uh-huh.
Right, Benny?
It's about how long the movie
Yeah,
Oppenheimer
we
is.
finally
It's
crested
been 3
Oppenheimer
hours.
length.
And so we do, yes, just, to underline, of course, have massive solidarity with the people on strike
Yeah.
Absolutely.
who deserve everything they're asking for and more.
Yeah, truly.
And the studios
more,
are
more.
craven pigs who
Yeah.
should bow to their every demand and apologize for ever putting them through anything else.
Yeah, it sucks. Look,
I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's just what should happen.
Yeah, I'll say this on mic. There is a joke I have with fellow podcasters who started out in
Yes, you've
film and
mentioned
television.
this
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah. Thank God we got into the very stable industry of podcasting, support our hobby of working in film and television, but that is increasingly what it feels like. Very grateful to all of you for listening to the show and supporting it because it is wild how unsustainable it has become to pursue any career in film and television.
Yep.
And then these companies, there's never been more of a demand for the things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and also, yeah, come on, Hollywood. Like I wrote about this. Do not watch this happen.
No.
This phenomenon.
No.
Of that's making people excited to be in movie theaters again and go like, should we just like punt everything off the schedule?
people voting with their dollars and like treating specific movies as special rather than just sludge coming down a pipeline.
Right.
Make things feel special again in a way that actually compensates the people who work on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Thank you all for listening.
We'll see you next week with I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay.
Karen
with Karen
Chi,
Chi.
the great Karen Chi.
Lovely episode.
First time guest. That's a very goofy episode.
She's so great.
For a deeply weird film. But yeah, back into Park Chan-wook for I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay, the namesake of our miniseries. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Marie Bardi and film director Barbie for
You're
being here.
welcome. That was film director Barbie. That wasn't me.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Was that you or film director Barbie?
That was me.
Okay. Slightly similar voices.
What's going on here?
Thank you to JJ Birch for enjoying his vacation this week.
It seemed like he went to Pitchfork Fest.
Yeah. He texted me
Him and Nick were hanging out. They're being cuties.
He texted me some guy at Pitchfork Fest saying about Lightning McQueen. He was really excited. So that was the first indie rock song to invoke Lightning McQueen by name. Ka-chow. Thank you to AJ McKee and Alex Barron for our editing, Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. We haven't gotten it yet, but we assume David will be wearing the Oppenheimer hat. It just feels like that's probably where this goes.
Yeah.
Put the hat on me. You put Bing Rames' hat on me for Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Keep putting hats on that head.
They're kind of diametrically opposed. In that Ving, it's always at an angle, and Oppenheimer's
Ramrod straight.
Yes. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features, where we're currently going through the Oceans movies.
Yep.
But also, every 10 days, we unlock an episode from 3 years ago, and there are a couple that have linked up very directly to things we're talking about here. So the Mission Impossible series is about to start being unlocked. And the Way of the Gun episode, the one sort of missing Macquarie episode. For
We
those
don't
of you who are
sound
not
depressed
Patreon.
on that episode. No,
Normal.
sorry, Bob.
I have a lot of optimism for the future.
Definitely not recorded in summer 2020.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. So yeah, tune in next week. We'll go back to the park. And as always, Christopher Nolan thinks that Oppenheimer is a hero and the bomb was good. That is how to read this movie.
Everyone should watch Threads. We didn't even talk about Threads.